Chapter 1980. Bang! AI Xinghua completely disappeared from this world. Not even a trace of him was left. He was completely killed by Murongyu. Initially, Murongyu did not plan to kill AI Xinghua. However, AI Xinghua had plotted against him and wanted him dead. Murongyu had no choice but to kill such a person. On the other side of the dilapidated city, after receiving AI Xinghua's message, AI Feiqi no longer cared about looking for treasures in the city. He immediately flew towards AI Xinghua's direction. However, before he could fly very far, AI Xinghua's soul jade slip, which he was holding tightly in his hand, suddenly exploded. AI Feiqi was stunned. He stared blankly at the soul jade slip that had been shattered into millions of pieces. He only reacted after a long time. AI Xinghua was dead. He was completely dead. Murongyu, the Dongfang family. AI Feiqi, who finally reacted, let out an earth-shattering roar. This was because AI Xinghua's message emphasized that he had met Murongyu. Now that AI Xinghua was dead, if it was not Murongyu's doing, what else could it be? Moreover, Murongyu was from the Dongfang family. As a result, AI Feiqi hated the Dongfang clan as well. However, the two families were not on good terms. Otherwise, this would not have happened. At the same time, AI Feiqi's speed skyrocketed as he roared towards the sky. He quickly rushed forward. He wanted to kill Murongyu. After killing AI Xinghua, Murongyu quickly left the place and entered the library. The library had another space that was extremely spacious. However, it was empty. There was nothing inside. Even if there were countless books and jade slips, they would have turned into dust after such a long time. Just as Murongyu was about to search carefully, a terrifying aura flew towards him from afar at a terrifying speed. It quickly approached the house that he was in. Could it be that old bastard, AI Feiqi? Murongyu was shocked. That old bastard was quite close to here. Murongyu could sense the existence of Dongfang Lang and the others, but they were too far away. Without saying a word, Murongyu entered the Hichu Luoshu and teleported away. Murongyu had long since developed a good habit. No matter where he went, he would immediately sense the connection between Hichu Luoshu and the teleportation point. At the same time, every time he arrived at a place, he would place a large number of teleportation points at different locations. After entering the broken city, Murongyu also placed many teleportation points along the way. Therefore, this time, he teleported to a teleportation point not far from the house, and then stretched out a sliver of divine year to take a look. Boom! As soon as Murongyu stretched out his divine thought, he saw a monstrous hand descending from the sky. Then, with a slap, the house that Murongyu was originally in was smashed into powder. Then, a figure stepped out of the void. Who else could it be but AI Feiqi? At this moment, the old bastard was constantly looking around with a gloomy face. At the same time, an incomparably huge divine thought quickly dissipated in all directions. Murongyu was shocked and quickly withdrew his divine thought. Then, he remained motionless in the Hichu Luoshu. The moment he withdrew his divine thought, he felt an incomparably huge divine thought sweep across the Hichu Luoshu. However, this divine thought did not stop and swept past. After all, Hichu Luoshu was now like an ordinary invisible particle. Why would AI Feiqi suspect him? Murongyu, Dongfang Lang. After searching for 3 or 4 times, AI Feiqi still could not find Murongyu. He probably thought that Murongyu had escaped. However, with Murongyu's strength, how could he have escaped so quickly? Even Murongyu and the other level 8 elders could not escape in time with Murongyu. Only Dongfang Lang could have done so. Therefore, AI Feiqi now suspected that Dongfang Lang was also present when Murongyu killed AI Feiqi. Perhaps AI Xinghua was killed by Dongfang Lang. After having this guess, AI Feiqi was extremely furious. Then, he expanded the search area. However, he still could not find any trace of Murongyu and was about to leave. However, at this moment, AI Feiqi's face suddenly changed and he roared, "Who is it? Come out!" Murongyu, who was in the Hichu Luo Shu, heard AI Feiqi's words and could not help but spit out a mouthful of saliva. Just when he thought that he had been discovered by AI Feiqi and was about to teleport away, an indifferent voice was heard. You sure have a big tone. You actually dare to tell me to get the hell out here? His voice was as cold as the winter. Murong stealthily opened up a crack in the He-Tu and Luo Shu. Soon after, he saw a young man standing in front of AI Feiqi. This was a young man with a cold and gloomy face. His entire body was filled with sword intent. The long sword on his back also emitted a powerful light that soared into the sky. Profound underworld realm origin weapon. Murong Yu's heart could not help but beat violently. He almost cried out in surprise. Then, his gaze shifted to the young man. The young man's power was also very strong. It was even stronger than Dongfang Lang and the others. However, it did not reach the level of the long sword on his back. Murong Yu estimated that this person should be a half-step profound underworld realm expert. A half-step profound underworld realm expert. An expert of this level was definitely the top expert in the solar system. He could do whatever he wanted in the solar system. However, how did this person appear here? Did he come in after they did? Who was he? Was he a terrifying existence from the lunar sect or the solar sect? A series of questions appeared in Murong Yu's mind. Moreover, Murong Yu could vaguely feel that the other party was not as simple as he seemed. The young man gave him a very dangerous feeling. However, at the same time, Murong Yu felt a sense of familiarity from the young man. It was as if the other party was his family. What was going on? It was dangerous and familiar at the same time. Who are you? Why are you spying on me? AI Feiqi obviously knew how powerful the other party was. He immediately lowered his stance slightly. Idiot! The young man glanced at AI Feiqi in disdain. AI Feiqi was furious. He was the leader of one of the top 10 forces after all. He was a level 9 creation realm expert. Although the young man had a mysterious background and was slightly stronger than him, he was not afraid of him. However, the other party was so rude. Was he mocking him? AI Feiqi snorted coldly and was about to leave. However, before he could move, the young man with a cold expression stood in front of him. AI Feiqi was furious. His grandson had just been killed. Now, someone was blocking his path. Was this not courting death? Therefore, he looked at the other party with a murderous look and said in a deep voice, "What do you mean?" "Nothing. You asked me to come out, and you're leaving just like that?" The young man said calmly. AI Feiqi suppressed the anger in his heart and said with a murderous look, "Then what do you want? Give me your spatial treasure, and you can leave. Of course, you can choose not to give it to me. However, if I attack you, the consequences will be severe." The young man said calmly, "Go to hell." AI Feiqi was finally enraged and attacked. He threw a punch at the young man. The young man sneered in disdain and threw a punch at AI Feiqi as well. Bang! After a deafening explosion, AI Feiqi was directly sent flying. However, the young man stood still on the spot. It was obvious who had the upper hand. The leader of one of the top 10 forces, a 9th-level creation realm supreme existence, could not even withstand a single attack from the young man. Murong Yu already knew the result. Therefore, he was not surprised. However, the furious AI Feiqi had calmed down. Half-step to Insight Realm. AI Feiqi looked at the young man in shock. But in the process, he had already taken out a powerful origin artifact. So what if his opponent was a half-step to Insight Realm? "If you want my spatial treasure, come at me." The young man shook his head helplessly. "Ignorant ant. Do you think you're a match for me just like that? Today, I'll show you that an ant will always be an ant." As he spoke, the young man threw a punch at AI Feiqi again. AI Feiqi did not say anything and slashed the origin tool in his hand. Rumble, after a deafening sound, AI Feiqi was sent flying again. However, this time, it was much more serious than the first time. In midair, he had been shaken to the point of spitting out blood. Was he seriously injured? Swoosh! Whoosh! In Murong Yu's eyes, AI Feiqi did not even have time to stabilize himself before he quickly fled to the back. He ran away without a fight. Isn't this old fart a little too afraid of death? Murong Yu thought to himself. If I were in his shoes, I'd also run away. After all, although it's embarrassing to run away, it's better than losing my life. The young man shook his head in disdain. He then took a step forward and chased after AI Feichi. However, just as he was about to leave, he glanced over at Murong Yu. It wasn't clear if it was intentional or not. Instantly, Murong Yu trembled as though he was struck by lightning. It was as though the young man had seen through him. It was extremely terrifying. Murong Yu dared to guarantee that the young man had definitely noticed his presence. Moreover, he had noticed it a long time ago. However, how did the young man notice his presence? What was the meaning of the glance he gave him before he left? Danger and intimacy. Such a contradictory feeling appeared on the young man at the same time. Murong Yu could not figure it out. However, he did not want to stay here any longer. Initially, he wanted to follow the young man to watch the battle between the two of them. After all, a battle of this level was extremely rare. However, the young man's glance changed Murong Yu's mind. Before he knew what a young man would do to him, he decided to avoid the young man as much as possible. After all, he did not know if the young man was a friend or foe. Thus, he directly teleported away from this place. However, the stern youth had left Murong Yu with a lot of questions. Chapter 1981. After leaving his original location, Murong Yu arrived at the other side of the ruined city. He still did not encounter anyone. After all, the ruined city was too big. Although Murong Yu and the others had entered, the probability of encountering each other was not high at all. However, apart from them and the stern-looking young man, were there more people who had entered this place? This question flashed through Murong Yu's mind. However, he quickly dismissed it. After all, these questions had nothing to do with him. He only needed to focus on finding treasures now. In the next few days, Murong Yu did not meet up with Dongfang Lang and the others. Instead, he acted alone. In the past few days, the powerhouses of the Dongfang family had already gathered together and acted together because of Murong Yu. Therefore, they had gained a lot of benefits. On the other hand, Murong Yu did not gain any benefits. He only gained some small treasures that were better than nothing. On this day, Murong Yu entered the headquarters of a force. As soon as he entered the house, a faint but incomparably rich fragrance wafted into his nose. At first, Murong Yu wanted to hold his breath. However, in the next moment, a look of surprise appeared on his face. He wanted to hold his breath because he was worried that the fragrance was poisonous. However, to his surprise, the fragrance was all the fragrance of medicinal herbs. In other words, there were many medicinal herbs growing in this forest. This was a big discovery. Along the way, Murong Yu did not even see a blade of grass or a tree, let alone medicinal herbs. Following the medicinal fragrance, Murong Yu soon entered a garden. Then, a large field of medicinal herbs appeared in front of Murong Yu. Neat plots of land appeared in front of Murong Yu. They were densely packed, and there were thousands of them. Every small piece of the medicinal field was filled with all kinds of lush and verdant medicinal herbs. Waves of incomparably rich medicinal fragrance were emitted from these medicinal fields. Murong Yu discovered that there were many medicinal herbs in the creation realm, or even beyond the creation realm among these medicinal herbs. Moreover, each medicinal herb was extremely old. Of course, there were also many medicinal herbs that were not old enough. Most likely, these underage herbs had only grown at a later stage. It was precisely because of this that the medicinal herbs in this dilapidated city were still in a lush state after so many years. Humph! At this moment, a cold snort came from the other side. Murong Yu turned around and saw a man glaring at him with murderous intent. Murong Yu recognized this person. He was one of the level 8 elders of the Silver Plume Pot. However, this elder only paced around the perimeter of the medicinal garden and did not pick the medicinal herbs that made his eyes red. Murong Yu was startled at first, then he sneered. This was definitely not because that rank 8 elder didn't pick those herbs out of self-respect, but because the entire herb garden was enveloped by layers upon layers of extremely powerful restrictions and formations. It was precisely because of these restrictions and formations that the herb garden was able to maintain such a dense amount of heaven and earth yuan qi, allowing these herbs to grow luxuriantly. This level 8 elder could not even enter the herb garden, let alone pick the herbs. At this moment, this level 8 elder of the silver plume pot was slowly closing in on Murong Yu, his eyes flashing as a terrifying murderous intent gathered on his body. Indeed, other than the people from the Dongfang family, everyone wanted to kill Murong Yu. Murong Yu frowned slightly. He was not afraid of this level 8 elder. This was because he had more than 10 drops of the sky spider poison on him. He could directly poison this fellow to death. However, Murong Yu did not intend to use such a precious sky spider poison. It would be too wasteful if he poisoned this fellow to death. Wasn't there a restriction and formation in the herb garden? Murong Yu sneered at his opponent, then took a step forward. Elder In Yu Pot laughed coldly and reached out his hand to grab Murong Yu. However, what surprised him was that in the next moment, his hand only grabbed a ball of air, and Murong Yu was no longer at his original spot. Old man, you could just watch me pick the herbs from outside. Murong Yu's mocking voice came from the level 8 elder's side. The 8th rank elder, In Yu Gua, was startled. He looked towards the source of the voice and happened to see Murong Yu plucking a precious medicinal ingredient that had aged well. At this moment, this level 8 elder had the urge to vomit blood. He had been in the herb garden for a day. This was because the herb garden gave him a very strong sense of danger. Therefore, he had been loitering outside the herb garden for the entire day. He did not dare to enter rashly. However, now that he saw Murong Yu enter the herb garden as soon as he arrived, and the restrictions and formations were not touched, he almost vomited blood. Therefore, he took a step forward and his body slammed into the herb garden. Looking at the level 8 elder In Yu Pot's actions, the mocking expression on Murong Yu's face became more and more intense. Did this old man really think that the rain restriction and formation were just for show? Poof! While Murong Yu was mocking his opponent, the silver feather pot's 8th rank elder had already split into two. Murong Yu even saw the other party's soul being split in two. The other party didn't even have time to react before he was killed. Murong Yu was also shocked because he did not know what was going on. That was a level 8 elder, a super existence in the level 8 creation realm. How could he die just like that? However, Murong Yu didn't know how the other party had been killed. But he was sure that it was definitely because of the restrictions and formations in the herb garden. These formations and restrictions had such terrifying power. If he could study them thoroughly and use them for himself, wouldn't it be very heaven-defying? Killing a level 8 elder would be as easy as killing a chicken or a dog. However, Murong Yu quickly shook his head and rejected this idea. These formations and restrictions were too advanced. With his current ability, it would be a problem for him to understand them. Even if he could, it would take an extremely long time. His priority now was to harvest the herbs. Therefore, Murong Yu began to harvest the herbs crazily. However, he did not harvest all the herbs in one go. Instead, he only harvested the aged herbs. After all, the effects of the aged herbs would not be satisfactory even if they were used to refine pills. As long as he let these herbs grow here, wouldn't it be better to harvest them in the future? With Murong Yu's power and ability, it would be very easy for him to come here in the future. Although Murong Yu increased the speed of harvesting the herbs, the herb garden was still too big. He had only harvested half of the herbs when someone came over again. And this time, it was not just 1 or 2 people, but a large group. Apart from the Dongfang family, some people from the other 9 forces had come. Dozens of level 8 elders were dumbfounded as they watched Murong Yu happily harvesting the herbs. At the same time, they also saw the corpse of the level 8 elder that In Yu Pot had killed. Naturally, they did not suspect that the level 8 elder had been killed by Murong Yu with a single slash. This was because Murong Yu definitely did not have the power to do so. But now, there was a problem. If it was not Murong Yu who killed the level 8 elder, then it was the formation that killed In Yu Pot. But why was Murong Yu not killed by the formation? The level 8 elders looked at each other with a pained and hesitant expression on their faces. This was because they could feel the existence of the restrictions and formations in the herb garden. This made them feel that it was dangerous. The reason for their heartache was that they had to watch helplessly as Muronyu pocketed a large amount of precious medicinal ingredients. They were supposed to have a share of these herbs. Now, all of them had become Muronyu's. How could they not feel pained? The crowd watched for a while longer. When they saw Muronyu harvest a large amount of herbs, they could no longer sit still. If this went on, they would not be able to get anything. Of course, they could wait until Muronyu came out and then snatch Muronyu's herbs. But there were so many of them. When the time came, they would definitely fight, and some of them would not get anything. If they entered the herb garden, they would more or less gain something. Therefore, the level 8 elders took out their origin weapons and placed them above their heads. Then they were about to enter. Whoosh! Whoosh! The first to enter the herb garden were the 2 level 8 elders from Domineering Palace and Celestial Immortal Palace. But just as they stepped into the herb garden, the origin weapons above their heads suddenly split into 2. Immediately, the 2 of them were shocked and retreated without any hesitation. But it was too late. Poof! Poof! After 2 muffled sounds, the 2 of them were split into 2 like Inu was level 8 elder. They could not be more dead. Hiss! Those level 8 elders who had not yet entered and were about to enter could not help but gasp. Their faces were filled with fear. In fact, they even retreated far away from the scene. This was too terrifying. Muronyu looked over and saw that the level 8 elders were so scared that their foreheads were covered in cold sweat. However, Muronyu's brows were also slightly wrinkled. In fact, although he had been harvesting herbs, he had been observing the changes in the array. When the level 8 elders from Celestial Immortal Palace and Domineering Palace rushed in, he looked over with all his might. This time, he finally saw that the 2 level 8 elders were killed by the origin weapons. 2 long swords that were intangible. Since they were long swords, why were they intangible? Because they were transparent and did not have any substance. Strictly speaking, they were like shadows. Projection. Muronyu had encountered such a situation before. He had even controlled an array that could project. The 2 long swords in the herb garden were clearly a projection of an array. If he wanted to destroy these projections, he had to destroy the array. However, Muronyu did not find a real array of the projection. Even Muronyu did not find out that he was in the array and restriction, let alone those level 8 elders who were scared out of their wits. They did not find out what had killed the 2 level 8 elders. Muronyu estimated that the projection of the array could definitely kill any level 8 elders who broke into the herb garden. As for Dongfang Lang and the other level 9 Creation Realm elders, Muronyu didn't dare to make any guesses because he didn't know how powerful this formation was. Therefore, to prevent the level 9 Creation Realm elders from breaking in, he did not pay attention to those level 8 elders outside. Instead, he picked up the herbs faster. Chapter 1982. Seeing Muronyu pick up the herbs at a faster pace, the level 8 elders outside the herb garden felt their hearts bleed. We have to call the palace master over. The level 8 elders from Domineering Shock Palace discussed for a while before sending out a message. At the same time, the others also send out a message to call for the most powerful experts in their respective forces. Muronyu naturally knew what was going to happen. Hence, he picked up speed again. In the end, he even conjured thousands of energy clones to pick the herbs together. With Muronyu's hard work, it did not take long for him to pick all the aged herbs in the entire herb garden. At this moment, the leaders of the various forces did not appear. Muronyu heaved a sigh of relief. Even if the leaders were to come, he was not afraid anymore. This was because he could leave. Even the level 9 Creation Realm people could not do anything to him. However, Muronyu was now faced with the problem of how to leave this place. Of course, he could teleport away immediately. However, that would expose the fact that his space treasure could not only carry living people, but also teleport people. If it could only carry living people, it would not be very tempting to these experts. After all, although there were very few space treasures that could carry living people, it did not mean that there were none. In the entire chaos space, only Hichu Luoshu could be used as a teleportation formation. Not to mention the creation realm. Even experts who were 10 or 100 realms higher would be envious. Hence, Muronyu did not want to expose the secret of Hichu Luoshu if it was not necessary. However, if he did not teleport away directly, how was he going to leave this place? Once he appeared, the level 8 elders would definitely take action to control him immediately. Moreover, when AI Feichi and the rest arrived, they might have a way to enter the formation. Of course, the premise was that AI Feichi was not killed by the cold-looking young man. Swoosh! With a flash, Moronyu disappeared from the spot. This kid has entered the space treasure. Is he trying to fight a battle of attrition with us? The level 8 elders outside the herb garden immediately thought of this. Among the medicinal herbs collected by Muronyu, there was no lack of precious insight realm medicinal herbs. Medicinal herbs of this grade were extremely useful to them. It was quite beneficial for them to break through to a higher realm. If Muronyu thought that he could outlast them, then Muronyu was gravely mistaken. These level 8 elders would definitely be waiting outside the array, waiting for Muronyu to appear. Time was not a problem for them at all. Haha, weren't you curious as to how I was able to enter this place? That's because I know how to get in and out of this formation. Yeah, I forgot to tell you that this array formation also has a teleportation ability. You guys can continue to wait outside. Young Master is going to teleport away. Murongyu's loud laughter came from the herb garden, causing the expressions of many rank 8 elders to change. If that was the case, then what was the point of waiting here? However, did the array formation of the medicine garden really have a teleportation function? Regarding this, they were also somewhat skeptical. Thus, no one left. Instead, they continued to stand guard outside. However, there was no news of Muronyu anymore. In that case, had Muronyu already left? The answer was of course yes. Muronyu did not need the teleportation ability of the array formation to leave directly. However, he did not say that on the spur of the moment. He had this thought for a long time. Since those people could not enter, they would not be able to control the array formation. They would not know if the array formation had the ability to teleport. Not long after, the leaders of the 9 great forces arrived one after another. When they heard about this, the expressions of the 9 great forces did not look good. The wealth of the medicinal herbs collected by Muronyu had already exceeded the value of their entire forces. After all, their entire wealth might not even be comparable to a single insight realm medicinal herb. Furthermore, Muronyu did not just obtain 1 or 2 insight realm medicinal herbs, but a large number of them. It was not wrong to describe it as a sea of them. If Muronyu was still here, he would definitely click his tongue in wonder. This was because AI Feichi was actually not killed by the cold-looking half-step insight realm young man. This old man does have some strength after all. However, this fellow's face was pale and his eyes were lifeless. He was probably heavily injured. After all, the cold-looking young man was a terrifying half-step insight realm existence. If AI Feichi did not pay a certain price, how could he escape? AI Feichi and the rest were also skeptical about Murongyu's teleportation. Moreover, they were also quite curious about the array and restriction of the herb garden. Therefore, the sect leader of the Blazing Red Sect, one of the 10 great forces who was a powerful existence at Creation Realm Level 9, suggested that everyone break through the array formation. After all, even if an 8th level elder could not break through the array formation, it did not mean that they could not. After they were ready, the sect leader of the Blazing Red Sect took the lead and charged toward the array formation. Swoosh! As soon as he stepped into the herb garden, he had already triggered the array formation. Subsequently, an illusory and terrifying sword slashed down rapidly with a terrifying force that could destroy heaven and earth. At this moment, the sect leader of the Blazing Red Sect was shrouded by an extremely strong aura of death. With the reaction speed of a peerless expert, he immediately reacted. At the same time, he retreated rapidly. Poof! The top creation realm, origin weapon above his head was slashed into two by the illusory sword. Due to his reaction speed, the sect leader of the blazing red sect had already retreated. Moreover, the illusory sword was also stopped by his origin weapon for a moment. Even so, one of the sect leader of the blazing red sect's arm was still cut off by the illusory sword and blood gushed out. If it was not for his reaction speed, he would have been slashed into two like the 3/8 level elders. It was extremely terrifying. Moreover, what shocked the sect leader of the blazing red sect the most was that he could not stop the bleeding from his severed arm, let alone regrow a new arm. Of course, with his powerful strength, it was not impossible for him to recover. However, it would take a long time. Moreover, with his current strength, he would not die even if all his blood was drained. Seeing this scene, the surrounding people couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air, especially those elders of the 8th rank. Each one of them felt lucky in their hearts. Fortunately, they were able to control themselves. Otherwise, they would have been dead. The sect leader of the blazing red sect was a supreme existence in the 9th level of the creation realm. He could crush them with one finger. Even he was almost killed, let alone them. The muscles on AI, Feichi, and the others' faces were twitching. They were secretly relieved. If the sect leader of the blazing red sect had not been too anxious, perhaps they would have been the ones who had their arms cut off. Due to the sect leader of the blazing red sect, no one wanted to continue to break through the formation. Instead, they changed their method and wanted to master the formation and restriction. However, they did not know that Murong-yu was lying to them. Murong-yu estimated that the formation and restriction were set up by at least a profound realm expert, or even an expert of a higher realm. Although the sect leader of the blazing red sect and the others were powerful, it was impossible for them to master the formation. Of course, all of this had nothing to do with Murong-yu. At this time, Murong-yu had already left the herb garden and walked towards the center of the ruined city. Along the way, he found that the closer he got to the center of the ruined city, the better the buildings were preserved and the more advanced the treasures were. The location of the herb garden was only in the central part of the ruined city. There were already profound realm-level treasures in the central part of the ruined city. What level of treasures would appear in the center of the ruined city? The realm above the profound realm? Murong-yu could feel the existence of the realm above the profound realm. At least there was a chaos controller above it. However, he had not even come into contact with a profound realm expert. He did not know what the profound realm was like, let alone what the realm above the profound realm was. He did not even know if there was a realm other than the chaos controller. In the process, Murong-yu harvested several profound realm-level origin tools. The harvest could be said to be quite rich. At the same time, Dongfang Lang and the others also gained something. However, the harvest was far less than Murong-yu's. After all, Murong-yu had collected the entire huge herb garden. Besides the herb garden, Murong-yu's main harvest was the origin tools. There were no more medicinal herbs, elixirs, or treasures of heaven and earth. The ruined city had existed for too long, and many things had already decayed. Murong-yu suddenly rubbed his eyes with his hand and looked in disbelief at the huge statue in the center of the city in front of him. When Murong-yu first came in, he had already seen this towering statue. But at that time, he did not see the statue clearly. It was too blurry. He only vaguely saw that the statue was of a man. But just now, he suddenly saw the appearance of the statue clearly, and that was what shocked him, because the statue was too similar to a person. The master of the seamless society. At first, Murong-yu thought he was hallucinating. Therefore, he was a little uncertain. But no matter how he looked at it, the statue was exactly the same as the master of the seamless society. Of course, he had only seen a power clone of the master of the seamless society. But with his memory, he definitely could not remember it clearly. Then, the question was, what kind of existence was the master of the seamless society? He had appeared in the holy world. Then, Murong-yu found a profound thunder bead that originally belonged to the master of the seamless society. Now, there's a statue of the master of the seamless society? What did all of this mean? Was there any connection between all of this? As for the Tao Lord of the Seamless Society, had he perished or not? Could it be that this ruined city is one of the dojos of the master of the Seamless Society? Morong Yu thought in his heart. Chapter 1983. If this was one of the dojos of the never-ending underworld's Tao master, then this dojo was so dilapidated that there wasn't even a single person here. Did that mean that the never-ending underworld's Tao master had already perished? This thought appeared in Morong Yu's mind, but he quickly rejected it. It was obvious that this dojo had been in ruins for a very long time. In the holy world, Morong Yu had even met the never-ending underworld's Tao master. This city had been in ruins first, and then Morong Yu had met the never-ending underworld's Tao master. If the never-ending underworld's Tao master hadn't perished, then why was his dojos so dilapidated? Thinking back to the profound lightning bead that had almost been shattered, Morong Yu vaguely sensed that the never-ending underworld's Tao master wasn't in a very good state. Even if the never-ending underworld's Tao master hadn't perished, he was probably injured, and quite seriously. Otherwise, he definitely wouldn't have let his dojos continue to decline. The more this was the case, the more worried Morong Yu became. And so, he walked towards the center of the ruined city. As long as he came into contact with the never-ending underworld's Tao master, he would definitely find some clues. Perhaps Morong Yu could follow these clues to find the never-ending underworld's Tao master. On this day, Morong Yu was slowly walking towards the statue. Of course, he wasn't flying over directly. Although he wanted to find some clues about the never-ending underworld's Tao master, the statue wouldn't run away. However, the treasures in this ruined city would be taken away by others. Thus, Morong Yu collected all the treasures along the way. Suddenly, Morong Yu abruptly stopped in his tracks. In that moment, he suddenly felt an incomparably strong sense of danger. At the same time, Morong Yu also felt a sense of familiarity. The stern youth had found him. This was Morong Yu's first reaction. Sure enough, a figure slowly stepped out of the void in front of him and finally landed not far in front of Morong Yu. "How did you find me?" Morong Yu's face was a little gloomy as he looked at the cold-looking young man. His heart was already in his throat. This fellow was much stronger than AI Feichi. He was a half-step netherworld realm existence. AI Feichi was no match for him. Although he was monstrous, no matter how monstrous he was only in the third level of the bright world realm. A smile appeared on the stern young man's face, but it was very cold. "My name is Lin Zhe. The reason why I am here is because we are the same kind of people. I can feel your presence. As long as you are within a certain distance, no matter where you are, you will not be able to escape my senses." Lin Zhe, the same kind of people? Morong Yu's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at Lin Zhe and coldly said, "I'm sorry, but I'm not the same type of person as you. You're a half-step insight realm cultivator, and I'm only a level 3 bright world realm rookie." The reason Morong Yu said this was because he knew that the other party had already discovered his existence when AI Feichi was chasing after him. However, he still did not understand how the other party could sense him. Why couldn't he sense anything at all? You must be very curious as to why I can sense you. Do you know why I said that we are the same kind of people? Lin Zhe did not get angry because of Morong Yu's cold attitude. His voice was still as cold as ever. Morong Yu did not speak. He only looked at the other party coldly. In reality, he had already raised his strength to the maximum. He could escape into Hichu Luo Shu at any time. Of course, the prerequisite was that he could escape. Because we are both soul cultivators. Lin Zhe's words stunned Morong Yu. Soul cultivator. Morong Yu was indeed stunned. From the cultivation world until now, the number of soul cultivators that Morong Yu had met could be counted on one hand. Those people were either unable to break through in the end, or they were already dead. Furthermore, after Morong Yu became the ruler of the holy world, he realized how rare soul cultivators were. In the entire holy world, there were definitely less than 3. After breaking through reincarnation and entering the endless universe, Lin Zhe was the first soul cultivator he had met. The only tragedy was that the other party was much stronger than him. Could it be that Lindsay could sense him just because they were both soul cultivators? Murong knew that his soul cultivation wasn't weak, but why hadn't he sensed anything like this? Since the other party had already pointed it out, Murong might as well admit it openly. That's right, I am a soul cultivator. But why don't I sense it? Furthermore, although we are the same kind of people, I don't know you, and I don't want to have anything to do with you. As he spoke, Murong was about to leave. However, Lin Zay's figure flashed, and he blocked his way again. Don't be in such a hurry to leave. Don't you want to know why I found you? Don't you want to know how I sensed you? Murong looked at the other party seriously, then shook his head. Although he was more interested, this guy was too dangerous, and he did not want to stay here. Murong could sense that the other party had appeared because he was plotting something. I can sense you because I cultivate a type of soul cultivation method. As long as you are a soul cultivator and are within a certain distance of me, I will be able to sense you. It's the same even if you are hidden in a spatial treasure. Although Lin Zai had a cold appearance, he was like a chatterbox. He chattered nonstop on his own. As for why I found you, of course, it's not as simple as you and I being the same kind of people. At this point, Lin Zai's face revealed a hint of joy and even a hint of madness. Do you know what realm my soul is in? The peak of the bright world realm, just half a step away from breaking through to the creation realm. However, the soul is really too difficult to cultivate. I have stayed here for countless years, but I still can't break through. Moreover, there are too few soul cultivators. There are no cultivation techniques or battle techniques at all. Originally, I was already in despair. However, I didn't expect to see you in the blazing light secret realm. If I'm not wrong, your soul should be at the peak of the rebirth realm, right? Although your soul is a little weak, if you can raise it to the chaos realm, your soul power will be much stronger. When that time comes, as long as I devour your soul, my soul will break through to the creation realm. Then, with my battle strength, it won't be a problem for me to kill a profound underworld realm expert, Lindsay said excitedly. However, Murong's expression was very ugly. He had long known that this guy was up to no good, but he did not expect him to be another person who wanted to devour his soul. Seeing Murong's gloomy expression, Lindsay laughed. You don't have to be like this. You should feel honored to be devoured by me. At least, when you were alive, you could have experienced the taste of a Chaos Realm soul. Without me, you wouldn't even be able to break through to the Chaos Realm. Also, don't think of escaping in front of me. The space here has already been sealed by me. Unless a profound underworld realm expert intervenes, no one can save you. Murong felt extremely depressed and annoyed at the same time. The reason why he did not escape was because he realized that the space here had been sealed by the other party. There was no other way. The other party was simply too strong. He was not someone he could contend against. Whoosh! Lindsay suddenly made his move. He stretched out his large hand and caught Murong before he could react. This was also the reason why Murong did not struggle. He was definitely not a match for the other party now, so he could only wait for an opportunity. Moreover, didn't this guy say that he wanted to improve his soul? When the time came, he would properly repay him. Murong was like this. The more dangerous it was, the calmer he was. After being caught by Lindsay, Murong was stuffed into a spatial treasure in the next moment. Then, Lindsay walked in. Lindsay waved his hand, and then a huge ball appeared in front of Murong. Murong looked over and was surprised to find that this ball actually contained a huge amount of soul power. Moreover, this soul power was extremely pure. This soul power is condensed from the souls of countless cultivators that I have killed and extracted from their souls. It's a pity that there are too few soul cultivators. Those who are not soul cultivators have souls that are too weak. Although this soul power is very pure, it is not of much help to me in my breakthrough. You are lucky today, Lindsay said excitedly with a smile. Murong's heart sank. How many cultivators had he killed, and how many souls had he taken to condense this drum-like ball? Murong did not find it difficult to understand Lindsay's words. The reason why Lindsay could not break through was probably not because of the soul power, but because he lacked comprehension. and Murong Yu's soul was able to cultivate to the peak of the rebirth realm. He definitely had a lot of souls, and after breaking through to the chaos realm, he would definitely have more comprehension. And devouring such souls might allow Lin Zhe's soul to break through. Cultivate. Don't even think about escaping. You won't be able to escape in my treasure space. Lin Zhe tossed the ball to Murong Yu and walked away. However, he did not really leave. Instead, he watched Murong Yu cultivate from the side. This was a good opportunity. Murong Yu did not hesitate to grab the ball and start cultivating. At this time, only a fool would reject such a good opportunity. Who cares? I'll break through first. After that, I'll think of a way to deal with Lin Zhe. That way, my chances of escaping will be higher. Murong Yu's soul had already reached the peak of the rebirth realm. Moreover, his soul power was sufficient. The only thing he lacked was a large amount of soul power. Therefore, under his frenzied devouring, his soul finally broke through in a few days. He broke through from the peak of the rebirth realm to the chaos realm in one go. Moreover, the soul power in the ball had not been completely consumed. Therefore, Murong Yu did not stop and continued devouring. And Lin Zhe, who was watching from the side, did not stop Murong Yu from continuing to devour the soul power. The stronger Murong Yu's soul was, the more help it would be to him. It would be best if Murong Yu could break through to the bright world realm in one go. That way, he would have 100% confidence in breaking through. Chapter 1984. It was unknown how many people's souls had been used to condense that ball of energy. Not only was it pure, but it also contained a huge amount of energy. It allowed Murong Yu to break through a major realm, from the rebirth realm to the chaotic realm. Then, under Murong Yu's continuous devouring, Murong Yu's soul continued to break through one small realm after another. The early stage of the chaotic realm, the middle stage of the chaotic realm, the late stage of the chaotic realm, and even, finally, Murong Yu's realm was pushed to the peak of the chaotic realm in one fell swoop. The soul realm was different from the cultivation realm. There were no 9 small realms from the first stage to the 9th stage. Instead, there were 4 small realms, the early stage, the middle stage, the late stage, and the peak. With the accumulation of the enormous soul power, Murong Yu's soul, which had already comprehended enough, broke through in one fell swoop and rushed from the peak of the rebirth realm to the peak of the chaotic realm. However, after reaching the peak of the chaotic space realm, the soul power in the sphere had been completely depleted. This made Murong Yu feel that it was a pity. However, being able to break through a major realm was a pleasant surprise. Therefore, Murong Yu was not too greedy. Seeing that Murong Yu could break through to the peak of the chaotic realm, Lin Zhe was very excited. Therefore, he did not stop Murong Yu from consolidating his soul realm. The more stable his realm was, the more benefits he would obtain after devouring. Moreover, his soul realm was at the peak of the bright world realm. Even if Murong Yu broke through to the bright world realm, he would still be under his control. Many days later, Murong Yu slowly stood up. At this moment, he had already consolidated his peak of the chaotic realm. At this moment, he was looking at Lin Zhe with a calm gaze. Lin Zhe, should I be grateful to you? Or should I be grateful to you? Lin Zhe laughed. You should be grateful to me, and you should feel lucky, because you will be devoured by me. As he spoke, Lin Zhe had already reached out his big hand to grab Murong Yu. This time, Murong Yu did not act rashly. Instead, he showed the attitude he should have at this time. Therefore, he took the initiative to launch a soul attack. Holy Soul Slash. A level 9 chaotic void realm soul attack slashed towards Lin Zhe. However, Lin Zhe only sneered. A soul attack of this level was like a child's play in front of an expert. He only needed to lightly shake his soul to shatter Murong Yu's soul attack. Murong Yu's strongest attack was the soul attack. Therefore, after seeing that his attack had failed, he did not continue to attack. That was a pure waste of energy. Lin Zhe, you will never obtain my soul. Even if I self-destruct, I won't let you off so easily. Murong Yu's face suddenly turned ferocious. He was actually preparing to self-destruct his soul. Lin Zhe had a look of disdain on his face. If you can self-destruct in front of me, then wouldn't I, a pinnacle bright world realm soul master, have wasted my time? As he spoke, an incomparably terrifying pressure suddenly erupted from his body, directly suppressing Murong Yu. Plop! Murong Yu's entire body was suppressed to the point that half of his body sank into the ground. Then, Lin Zhe reached out his hand and directly inserted it into Murong Yu's soul space. When he saw the incomparably huge soul sphere, he could not help but be stunned. What was going on? After being stunned for a moment, a strong sense of jealousy grew in Lin Zhe's heart. Although he did not know what the soul sphere was or what ability it had, it was obvious that Murong Yu's understanding of the soul was more than his. Murong Yu was just a disciple of a cheap star system in the solar system. How could he understand more than him? He was the third young master of the Lin family. However, Lin Zhe soon sneered. So what if Murong Yu was monstrous? Wasn't he still devoured in the end? After devouring Murong Yu's soul, he would inherit Murong Yu's comprehension and ability. He would also have this soul sphere. Therefore, he did not touch Murong Yu's soul sphere now. Instead, he directly grabbed Murong Yu's soul. However, when he grabbed Murong Yu's soul, Lin Zhe was once again stunned. Why did he feel that Murong Yu's soul was a little weak? It did not seem like the soul of a peak chaotic realm at all. Not to mention the chaotic realm, it did not even seem to be at the peak of the rebirth realm. Perhaps all of his power is concentrated in that soul orb. Lin Zhe found a plausible reason for his suspicion. In the next moment, he grabbed Murong Yu's soul from his soul space and devoured it. In Lin Zhe's soul space, Murong Yu's soul had already been sealed and swallowed by Lin Zhe's soul. Lin Zhe, man proposes, but God disposes. Do you think you could devour my soul? Who knows what will happen in the end? Murong Yu's voice suddenly sounded in Lin Zhe's soul. At the same time, a loud sound suddenly came from Lin Zhe's soul. It was obvious that Murong Yu's soul had self-destructed. Self-destructed? It did not matter. Lin Zhe could still devour it. Therefore, he only sneered. But soon, he could no longer sneer. This was because he suddenly realized that Murong Yu's self-destruction did not cause any substantial damage to him. However, after the self-destruction, there were more than 10 raindrop-like things in his soul. Waves of extremely strong and dangerous aura constantly came from these black raindrop-like things. Before he could react, waves of incomparably intense pain caused him to scream uncontrollably. At the same time, Lin Zhe was even more shocked to find that his soul was rapidly being corroded by these raindrop-like things. In just an instant, a third of Lin Zhe's soul had been corroded. What the hell is this? Lin Zhe screamed crazily. Murong Yu's voice sounded. Do you know the sky spider? This is the sky spider poison water. More than 10 drops of destiny realm level 9 sky spider poison water. Lin Zhe, enjoy it. Lin Zhe's face instantly turned pale. The destiny realm level 9 sky spider poison water was enough to kill him, a half-step insight realm expert. Moreover, his soul was not as strong as his cultivation. He was only at the peak of the bright world realm. Murong Yu, you're dead. Our Lin family will not let you go. Your entire solar system will be buried because of your stupidity. Lin Zhe roared crazily. However, his voice became softer and softer. Finally, his voice disappeared completely. This was because his entire soul had been corroded. At this moment, Murong Yu quickly took action and took away Lin Zhe's spatial treasure. Just as the spatial treasure left Lin Zhe's body was completely corroded. Not even a powder was left. Clang! After the sound of metal clashing, a long sword fell to the ground. A glint flashed through Murong Yu's eyes as he grabbed the long sword with his hand. This long sword could resist the corrosion of the sky spider poison water. It was at least an insight realm origin item. In Murong Yu's opinion, this long sword was at least a top-grade insight realm origin item. It was very precious. After throwing the long sword into the Hichu Luo Shu, Murong Yu pondered. Lin Zhe said that he was from the Lin family. Moreover, he wanted to destroy the entire solar system. This meant that the Lin family should be a colossus even bigger than the Sun sect. The solar system did not have a colossus like the Lin family. This meant that the Lin family should be outside the solar system. They should be at least an insight realm origin item. Moreover, it could be a force that surpassed the insight realm. This made Murong Yu a little depressed. Why did he offend enemies that were much stronger than him? He had not dealt with the Sun sect yet, and now an even stronger force had popped up. This hatred, however, Murong Yu was not too worried. He did not know where the Lin family was. Even if he knew that Lin Zhe was dead, he probably did not know where he died. Even if he knew that Lin Zhe died in the Lai Guang secret realm, he would not know that he was killed by Murong Yu. Then, how did Murong Yu kill Lin Zhe? Hadn't his soul been devoured? In fact, all of this was done deliberately by Murong Yu. He acted according to the circumstances. During this period of time, Murong Yu's main soul had been in the Hichu Luo Shu. The one in his soul space was only his soul incarnation. Originally, Murong Yu only did this as a precaution. However, he had already used this method to save his life several times. Ever since Lin Zhe was captured, Murong Yu had been planning. The only thing he could use to kill Lin Zhe was the sky spider venom. However, Lin Zhe was much stronger than him. Even if Murong Yu used the sky spider venom, he might not be able to hit him. Thus, Murong Yu had been waiting for the right opportunity. When he learned that Lin Zhe was going to devour his soul, Murong Yu had secretly hidden the dozen drops of sky spider venom in his soul incarnation. After his soul incarnation was devoured, he detonated the dozen drops of sky spider venom. Murong Yu had been afraid that 1 or 2 drops of sky spider venom would kill Lin Zhe, so he had detonated all of it. In the end, Lin Zhe was unable to escape and was poisoned to death by the dozen drops of sky spider venom. This made Murong Yu feel that it was a bit of a pity. Of course, it wasn't because of Lin Zhe's death, but because of the sky spider venom. If he had used it well, he would have been able to kill a dozen half-step profound insight experts. But now he had only killed Lin Zhe. It was really too much of a waste. However, he had obtained Lin Zhe's spatial treasure. The treasures inside should be able to make up for the loss of the sky spider venom, right? While Murong Yu was lamenting the waste, in a place far, far away from the solar system, a huge monster let out an earth-shattering roar because of Lin Zhe's death. Chapter 1985. The Lin family, even in the local area, was a colossal existence with terrifying power. Lin Zhe was the third son of the current head of the Lin family and was one of the most beloved people of the current head of the Lin family. He was known as the third young Master Lin. The third young Master Lin did not disappoint. He had reached the half-step insight realm at such a young age. The upper echelons of the Lin family knew that the third young Master Lin was not only a half-step insight realm cultivator, but also a soul cultivator. Therefore, Lin Zhe's position in the Lin family could be said to be number 1 among the younger generation of the Lin family. His position was even comparable to some of the senior elders of the Lin family. It cannot be helped. Soul cultivators were just that precious. Once they grew up, they would definitely be earth-shattering. Therefore, when they heard that Lin Zhe had died, the entire Lin family was in an uproar. The current head of the Lin family was even more enraged and roared continuously. However, there was something suspicious about this. As the number 1 among the younger generation of the Lin family would definitely not be at ease with him going out to train by himself. Therefore, Lin Zhe had some methods left behind by the current head of the Lin family. For example, he had left behind a projection and a divine will clone. As long as it was in the nearby star field, any expert who knew of Lin Zhe's identity would have some reservations and would not kill him. After all, he had obtained the Lin family. If they encountered someone who wanted to kill Lin Zhe, the methods left behind by the current head of the Lin family would quickly kill them. However, the current head of the Lin family and the others did not feel that the methods they left behind on Lin Zhe had not been activated. There is only one reason for this, and that was that Lin Zhe had died too quickly. He had died before those methods could even be activated. To be able to kill Lin Zhe so quickly, one had to be at least an intermediate insight realm cultivator. Therefore, the furious Lin family immediately pointed their suspicion at the enemy of the Lin family. As for the solar system, they had never even thought about it. Of course, while they were suspicious, the Lin family also used all the methods they could to investigate the truth of this matter. With the power of the Lin family, it was only a matter of time before they found the Lai Guang's secret realm. Murong Yu was not worried about this. So what if they knew? How would they know that it was Murong Yu who killed Lin Zhe? Even if they knew that Murong Yu was killed, where would they find Murong Yu? However, if Murong Yu knew that Lin Zhe had many divine sense incarnations left behind by the Almighty, he would probably be scared half to death. An expert of that level, even if it was just a divine thought incarnation, could easily destroy him. Whoosh! Murong Yu's figure flashed and entered Hichu Luoshu. In the next moment, he activated Hichu Luoshu's teleportation ability and disappeared on the spot. Then, he prepared to take inventory of his gains. This was where he was being cautious, leaving immediately after killing the enemy. Otherwise, if he encountered something bad again, he might be killed, although it was extremely dangerous this time, and Murong Yu's soul had almost been devoured by Lin Zhe. However, danger and opportunity always coexisted. Murong Yu's soul had risen from the pinnacle of the rebirth realm to the pinnacle of the chaos realm. Based on this point alone, even if there were no other gains, Murong Yu would definitely make a profit. His cultivation realm was at the third level of the bright world realm, which was comparable to the third level of the creation realm. If coupled with his soul that was at the pinnacle of the chaos realm, Murong Yu was now confident that he could kill a third-level creation realm expert instantly. If coupled with the weapon fragments, even a fourth-level creation realm expert could be easily killed. As for the fifth level of the creation realm, this level of existence was much stronger than a fourth-level creation realm expert. Murong Yu had not encountered such an existence yet, so he was not confident that he could kill them. However, it would not be easy for a fifth-level creation realm expert to kill him. However, Murong Yu's attention was no longer on these mid-level creation realm experts, but on the high-level creation realm experts and even the insight realm experts. It cannot be helped who asked his enemies to be so powerful. Those high-level experts were the ones who forced him to go after them. In addition to the breakthrough of his soul, Murong Yu also obtained Lin Zhe's space treasure and the long sword he carried on his back. The long sword was very extraordinary, and it was at least a top-level insight realm origin artifact. However, this long sword was too obvious, and if he took it out and used it, he would be recognized very quickly. Therefore, the end result of this sword was either to be sealed or to be devoured. Because Lin Zhe was already dead, his space treasure was already in an ownerless state. Because of this, Murong Yu's divine sense was able to easily enter the room. Big. This was the first impression that Lin Zhe's space treasure gave Murong Yu. Many. The second impression was many. This space treasure was simply like the treasure trove of a force. There were many things in it, and the number and types were countless. Moreover, every one of them was good. Murong Yu casually looked around and realized that the worst item in Lin Zhe's space treasure was a supreme-level creation realm item. There was really nothing below supreme level. There were also quite a number of insight realm items. Origin artifacts, pills, heavenly treasures. These items were naturally the most abundant. Murong Yu also discovered that Lin Zhe's space treasure had many cultivation techniques and battle skills, especially those cultivation techniques, which were even more profound and powerful than the Sun Sutra. These cultivation techniques should be considered high-grade, even in the Lin family, right? Murong Yu thought to himself. However, Murong Yu could no longer cultivate other cultivation techniques. As for Lin Zhe's battle skills, some of them were very powerful. However, they were not suitable for Murong Yu, so he skipped them. In the end, Murong Yu discovered a few interesting things. When he figured out what was going on, cold sweat poured down his forehead like a waterfall. These were all transparent balls the size of a pinky finger. They looked like glass beads, and there was nothing special about them. However, in Murong-Yu's eyes, these glass beads contained a terrifying power. The power light was very intense. At first, Murong-Yu thought that these beads were like soul balls that he had devoured. However, he soon discovered that they were not. This was because these glass beads would occasionally emit traces of an extremely strong and dangerous aura. It even made Murong-Yu's hair stand on end. The power light had surpassed the half-step insight realm and should have reached the insight realm. After studying it, Murong-Yu confirmed that these beads were not something, but a seal. And sealed within the seal was a divine consciousness incarnation. Once this bead was shattered, the incarnation would appear and attack the target with all its strength. Murong-Yu estimated that with the power of these beads, they were comparable to an ordinary insight realm expert. In other words, these beads could kill insight realm experts. These were good things, even more terrifying than the sky spider poison water. Murong-Yu felt that it was a pity that he had wasted the sky spider poison water, but now he no longer felt that it was a pity. Not to mention a dozen drops of sky spider poison water, even a dozen buckets, could not compare to one bead. Moreover, it was not just one bead, but 3. In other words, Murong-Yu could kill 3 ordinary insight realm experts. Immediately, Murong-Yu suppressed the excitement in his heart and carefully transferred the 3 beads into the Hichu Luo Shu. These 3 beads were now Murong-Yu's strongest trump card. With them, he would not be afraid even if the Sun sect leader attacked him. In the end, Murong-Yu named these 3 beads incarnation sealing beads. He could not always call them beads, right? Moreover, this was only what he called them. Who cared what others called them? Murong-Yu continued to count the goods. After half a day, Murong-Yu finally stopped. To sum up today's harvest in one sentence, it was a huge harvest, a lot of benefits. Moreover, Murong-Yu's most urgent source of crystals had been replenished. It was even 1,000 times, 10,000 times more than before. The most important thing was that these crystals were of a higher grade. First, it's time to go to the center of the broken city. Murong-Yu thought in his heart and walked out of the Hichu Luo Shu. He first contacted Dongfang Lang and the others, and found that except for him and those who died, everyone had already reached the center of the broken city, which was under the huge statue of the Seamless Society sect leader. Because Murong-Yu had wasted a lot of time breaking through the soul realm. Immediately, Murong-Yu also flew toward the huge statue of the Seamless Society sect leader. On the way, he did not stop, because with the strength and speed of Dongfang Lang and the others, they would have already swept away all the treasures on the way. How could there be any good things left for Murong-Yu? Flying directly, Murong-Yu's speed was much faster. But when he got close to the center of the broken city, it still took him a full day. One could imagine how big this broken city was. Murong-Yu. When Murong-Yu appeared, AI Feiqi gnashed his teeth and looked over with a face full of resentment. AI Feiqi, pay attention to your status. Dongfang Lang looked at AI Feiqi with a gloomy face and murderous intent. If AI Feiqi dared to make a move against Murong-Yu, he would definitely stop him at the first moment. Dongfang Lang, is your Dongfang family going to fall out with our Thunderclap Valley because of this person? This person killed AI Xinghua. I must kill him. AI Feiqi's face was gloomy, and murderous intent overflowed. Dongfang Lang's face was ugly, and his voice was low. You saw Murong-Yu kill AI Xinghua? Perhaps AI Xinghua was killed by some restriction or array formation. Don't talk nonsense if you don't have evidence. Also, our Dongfang family is not afraid of your Thunderclap Valley. If you want to fight, I will accompany you at any time. Dongfang Lang was also angry, and he glared at AI Feiqi. On the other hand, Murong-Yu, the person involved, had a nonchalant look on his face, as if the dispute between the two had nothing to do with him. He only raised his head and looked at the towering statue of the Seamless Society's sect leader, lost in thought. Chapter 1986. Standing beneath the huge sculpture, Muronyu wasn't unable to clearly see it due to the angle he was at. On the contrary, he could see it even more clearly. This was indeed the statue of the Seamless Society's Tao Master. However, what made Muronyu feel strange was that this statue seemed to be a weapon. This was because when he got closer, Muronyu discovered that this statue was actually shining with an intense light. Moreover, this light was not weak. It was much stronger than the half-step Netherworld Insight Stage Lens A. This is actually a weapon? What kind of person would make their own statue look like a statue? Muronyu was speechless. If it was him, he definitely wouldn't do such a shocking thing. After all, using his own statue to fight? Muronyu didn't have such a hobby. However, just because Muronyu didn't do it didn't mean that others didn't. Just like the people of the Holy World, every one of Muronyu's followers had a small statue of Muronyu. This didn't exclude the possibility that some people had refined Muronyu's statue into a saint artifact, and such a huge statue was erected in the middle of this rundown city. Thus, Muronyu thought of a possibility. This could be one of the Seamless Society's Tao Master's dojo, where he might have helped this rundown city in the past. Out of gratitude, the people erected his statue here. This explanation was more reasonable. However, Muronyu was more interested in this huge statue. This was possibly a Netherworld Insight Stage origin artifact. Even if it wasn't an origin artifact, Muronyu still wanted to take it away. After all, this was the statue of the Seamless Society's Tao Master. It was a bit too much to let him stand here in the wind and rain. Thus, Muronyu slowly walked up. Seeing this scene, the surrounding people's gazes all gathered on Muronyu. Even the enraged AI Feichi, who was about to start a fight, looked at Muronyu with a dumbfounded expression. This was because they had been here for a long time, but they couldn't get close to the statue at all. This was because once they got close to the statue would release a force that would send them flying. This was neither a formation nor a restriction. It was a method the sculpture used to protect itself. Over the past many days, it was not that they had not attempted to do so. However, no matter how hard they tried, they were unable to approach the lightning. However, Muronyu was able to walk in with ease. The power that sent them flying had never appeared. This not only made them feel depressed. When they thought about how Muronyu had entered the herb garden, they couldn't help but wonder if Muronyu was the reincarnation of the city lord of this ruined city. Otherwise, how could he walk here as if he was walking on flat ground, while the others were struggling to move forward? Oh no, I'm afraid the benefits here will be obtained by that brat again. Suddenly, the 9 great powers all had the same thought. Following that, one of the controllers made his move. He stretched out his hand and grabbed at Muronyu. They were not willing to let Muronyu obtain the treasures here alone. Although the sculpture didn't seem to be anything special, they felt that it wasn't real. This statue might hide some shocking secret. It might even be the inheritance of a profound underworld realm expert. Dongfang Lang flew into a rage and threw out a punch. On the surface, Muronyu was a member of the Dongfang family. Secretly, Muronyu was their master. He would definitely not watch these people attack Muronyu. However, just as Dongfang Lang attacked, other than the person who attacked Muronyu, the other controllers of the 8 great powers also attacked. They directly destroyed Dongfang Lang's attack. At the same time, they slowly closed in on Dongfang Lang. Dongfang Lang's face was very gloomy. With his strength, it was not a problem to deal with 1 or 2 of them. However, when the 8 of them joined forces, he was no match for them. As for those elders of the 8th level, although they did not attack, the elders of the 8 great powers were also eyeing Dongfang Yuan and the others covetously. This made Dongfang Yuan and the others speechless and depressed. Buzz, the Hall Master of Tyrannical Shock Temple's hand, was about to grab Muronyu. At this moment, the statue that had been standing between heaven and earth without any abnormalities suddenly trembled. A white light immediately appeared and blasted directly on the Hall Master of Tyrannical Shock Temple's attack. With a poof, the Hall Master of Tyrannical Shock Temple's attack was blasted into pieces. However, the white light did not disappear. It did not even pause and blasted directly at the Hall Master of Tyrannical Shock Temple. The Hall Master of Tyrannical Shock Temple's expression changed slightly. He snorted coldly and threw out a punch. Oomph. The white light was shattered by him with a single punch. However, the Hall Master of Tyrannical Shock Temple was also sent flying by the impact. In the void, a trace of blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. He was actually injured and vomited blood. Seeing this scene, Dongfang Lang and the others were greatly shocked. On the other hand, Murong acted as if nothing had happened. He was not affected at all. This not only made these Creation Realm Level 9 experts feel stifled. Why were they Creation Realm Level 9 supreme existences inferior to a Bright World Realm Level 3 cultivator rookie in this shabby city? Haha! Dongfang Lang laughed loudly and no longer attacked. Instead, he turned and retreated, standing together with the Dongfang family's Level 8 elders. Dongfang Yuan and the others looked at AI Feiqi and the others with mocking eyes. In particular, the Hall Master of Tyrannical Shock Temple was collectively despised by them. It was too embarrassing. The Hall Master of Tyrannical Shock Temple's face was a little red. It was not that he was too weak, but that the white light was much stronger than the previous attack. Therefore, he was caught off guard and was injured. This white light is a little strange. Everyone, join forces to detain Murong Yu. The Hall Master of Tyrannical Shock Temple walked back and said in a low voice. His failure to attack Murong Yu made him quite angry. Although the leaders of the other 8 forces wanted to laugh at the Hall Master of Tyrannical Shock Temple, it was more important to suppress Murong Yu now. Therefore, they attacked together, intending to detain Murong Yu. On the other side, Dongfang Yuan and the others looked at Dongfang Lang. Patriarch, don't we have to stop them? Dongfang Lang shook his head. He believed that even if all of them attacked together, they would not be able to detain Murong Yu. Moreover, he could not stop them even if he wanted to. If he was at the half-step insight realm, he might be able to stop them, but with his current strength, it was impossible. As expected, when everyone's attacks entered the range of the sculpture trembled once again, and an incomparably blinding white light appeared out of thin air. The moment the white light appeared, AI Feiqi and the others felt an incomparably strong aura of death envelop their hearts. With a thought, everyone directed their attacks, which were originally aimed at Murong Yu, towards the white light that had appeared out of nowhere. Boom! After an earth-shattering explosion, the power of both sides disappeared. However, the leaders of the 9 major forces were all sent flying one after another. Blood trickled from the corners of their mouths. Moreover, a few unlucky Grade 8 elders from the 8 forces who were closer to them were directly crushed to dust and died. On the other hand, the Dongfang clan who was watching the show from the sidelines was not affected at all. In fact, they did not feel any danger at all. This must be because of the sculpture. It would target anyone who harbored ill intentions towards it. Damn it, the leaders of the 9 forces all had gloomy expressions on their faces. This was too embarrassing. However, the more it was so, the more terrifying the sculpture was. It was at least at the insight realm. Could this sculpture be a profound insight realm origin tool? The same thought appeared in everyone's minds, and they became more and more excited. Then, everyone turned to look at Murong Yu. At this moment, Murong Yu had already risen into the air and was flying toward the sculpture's head. No one knew what was going on with Murong Yu, so they could only watch as Murong Yu put on a show. Only Murong Yu knew what was going on. Previously, he had tried to take this sculpture. After a few attempts, he realized that this sculpture could be taken away. However, the sculpture was too heavy. With Murong Yu's current strength, he could not take it into the Hichu Luo Shu. In other words, he had failed. However, this sculpture was an origin tool, so it was possible for it to recognize him as its master. As long as it recognized him as its master, Murong Yu would be able to use it. However, Murong Yu still felt that he did not know where to start. Therefore, he flew up and wanted to take a look around. Therefore, in the process of flying, he kept checking the sculpture with his immense divine thought. The more he looked, the more shocked he was. There was no other reason. This sculpture was not a sculpture, but was refined by someone. He did not know what material was used to refine it, but it was very compact and hard. Muronyu compared this sculpture with the Insight Realm origin tools in his hands. He realized that even Lin Zhe's long sword could not compare to this sculpture in terms of material. In other words, this sculpture was of a higher level than Lin Zhe's top Insight Realm origin tool. Could it be an origin tool that surpassed the Insight Realm? He was excited just thinking about it. However, Muronyu was only slightly excited. If he could not take it away, even if it was a Chaos Controller level origin tool, it would have nothing to do with him. Soon, Muronyu flew near the sculpture's head. The sculpture was lifelike. Its eyes, nose, mouth, and ears were exactly the same as the real thing. However, Muronyu still felt that one of the sculpture's ears was different from the other facial features. There seemed to be a doorway there. Muronyu walked straight in. Because the sculpture was huge, the sculpture's ear hole was like a huge cave. Muronyu did not feel narrow when he entered. It was indeed a door. However, it was tightly shut. Muronyu tried and realized that he could not open it. There were no cracks in the doorway to enter. After trying many methods, Muronyu simply sat down and thought about the strange things he had encountered along the way. Chapter 1987. Muronyu had a chaotic celestial body physique, so he was immune to all restrictions and formations. Thus, along the way, none of the restrictions or formations could stop him. It was as if he was taking a leisurely stroll through a courtyard. However, there were no formations or restrictions in the vicinity of this huge statue. Why had Muronyu come in here? Why had the others not been able to take half a step closer to the lightning? This was definitely not because of his physique. If it was just a pure power attack, how could it differentiate between his physique? His physique did not have the ability to be immune to power. Otherwise, he would be heaven-defying. So what was the specific reason? While Muronyu was deep in thought, he suddenly recalled something that he had almost forgotten. When he had approached the statue, it seemed as if a kind of divine sense had shot out from the statue and swept past his body. It was so fast that Muronyu almost did not notice it. Perhaps the statue was scanning him? Was it because he had been scanned that the statue did not attack him? But why had he been scanned? Could it be because of my relationship with the Seamless Society's master? Otherwise, there's no other explanation. Muronyu thought to himself. He did not cultivate the techniques of the Seamless Society because it would be useless. However, he was the disciple of the Seamless Society's master. In the past, the Seamless Society's master had left something similar to a divine sense clone on his body. Perhaps it had sensed the aura of the Seamless Society's master? If that's the case, Muronyu suddenly stood in front of the door. Then, he pressed his hand on the door. At the same time his hand touched the door, Muronyu had already magnified the faint aura that the Seamless Society's master had left on his body. Moreover, he had also activated some of the techniques of the Seamless Society. Although it was useless for him to cultivate, it did not mean that he could not use these techniques. As if he felt that this was not enough, Muronyu took out the mysterious Thunder Bead. Although the mysterious Thunder Bead had recognized Muronyu as its master, it had previously been the Seamless Society's master's origin tool. Rumble. Sure enough, Muronyu's guess was not wrong. With a series of loud noises, the door was directly opened. Muronyu's face showed a touch of joy, and then he strode in. Rumble. Just as Muronyu entered the sculpture, the door closed. Muronyu turned his head and looked over, only to discover a switch near the door that should be used to open the door. With this switch, they could freely exit the interior of the sculpture. However, it would be difficult for them to enter. Muronyu estimated that even a Nether Insight Realm expert would be unable to easily blast open this door. Behind the door was a long passageway. Muronyu walked along this passageway. What rich heaven-earth yuan qi! I'm afraid it's even richer than Flying Wolf Planet's heaven-earth yuan qi. The deeper he went, Muronyu realized that the heaven-earth yuan qi was getting richer. One had to know that the Flying Wolf star was a 4 yuan star. Could it be that the heaven-earth essence chi inside this sculpture was comparable to the five elemental stars? That was a powerful origin star that could cultivate a nether insight realm expert. Moreover, how did the heaven-earth yuan chi gather here without dissipating? This question surfaced in Murongyu's mind. When he was outside, he did not feel that there was anything special about the heaven-earth yuan chi near the sculpture. Continuing to walk forward, not long after, an incomparably huge space appeared in front of them. It was probably about 100,000 miles in radius, and the location of this space should be the sculpture's head space. However, although the sculpture was huge, it was not to the extent of 100,000 miles in size. Therefore, there was another space inside the sculpture. This confirmed Murongyu's guess. This sculpture should be an origin tool, and it was at least a nether insight realm level origin tool. In this huge space, the surrounding heaven-earth yuan chi lingered. The rich heaven-earth yuan chi was like a white fog shrouding the entire space. It was very suitable to cultivate here. Looking carefully, Morongyu finally discovered why the heaven-earth yuan chi gathered here and did not dissipate. Other than the incomparably sturdy sculpture itself, there were also large amounts of array formations and restrictions scattered around. Some of the array formations and restrictions had the effect of confining the heaven-earth yuan chi. In the process of observation, Morongyu even saw traces of heaven-earth yuan chi continuously entering this huge space. Other than the heaven-earth yuan chi that had the power of confinement, there were also array formations and restrictions that could devour the heaven-earth yuan chi. And these restrictions and array formations were very advanced. Although they were constantly devouring the heaven-earth yuan chi, there was nothing strange outside the sculpture. Morongyu guessed that these array formations and restrictions actually had the same ability as the Tree of Life. They could directly devour the heaven-earth yuan chi in the vicinity of a large area. And the speed and range of the devouring were very uniform. It would not devour more heaven-earth yuan chi outside the sculpture and less heaven-earth yuan chi outside the sculpture. Morongyu made a preliminary estimation. He found that the range of the heaven-earth yuan chi this sculpture could devour should be about the same as Pasiti. In other words, the entire Pasiti's heaven-earth yuan chi was within the range of the sculpture's devouring. This is too amazing. Morongyu could not help but click his tongue in wonder. Even Hichu's array formation was studied with great interest. Morongyu also studied it for a while. He found that these array formations were not necessarily very advanced and complicated. In fact, some of the formations were only the simplest ones. But after some improvement and combination, the current effect was produced. Of course, other than the confinement and devouring array formations and restrictions, there were also various array formations for attack, defense, and so on. After Morongyu's study, he found that the entire space, and even the entire sculpture's head, was filled with all kinds of array formations and restrictions. There were countless of them. This incomparably huge space was like an incomparably huge square. And on one side of the square, there was a passage leading down. Morongyu immediately walked down the passage. There was another huge space below, but it was different from the spacious square above. It was densely packed with all kinds of small rooms. Morongyu casually walked into some of the small rooms and found that they were also self-contained spaces, like caves. But now, they were all empty, and there was nothing left in each cave. But the heaven-earth yuan chi in these caves was very rich. Morongyu felt a sense of familiarity as he looked at the densely packed caves. This is the same as the Sun-Sect Sun Mountain, but this is inside the sculpture. Hichu suddenly said. Morongyu's eyes flashed with a flash of light. Hichu's words reminded him. Isn't this the structure of a sect? There was a huge square above, and this level was where the disciples lived. Then, was the third level the place to do things? Like the mission hall, the library, and the treasure vault? Soon, Morongyu went down the passage. Sure enough, it was exactly as he guessed. This was the function hall of the treasure vault, the library, the mission hall, and so on. But it was still empty, and nothing was left. However, There were two passageways leading downwards on the second floor. Murong-yu chose one of the passages and walked down one floor at a time until he reached the 10th floor. From a 3rd to the 10th level, after Murong-yu's research, the lower the level, the higher the level. For example, the 3rd level was where the 1st level elders lived, then the 4th level was where the 2nd level elders lived, and the 10th level was where the controller lived. And the 10th level also reached the top, and there was no passage to continue. Murong-yu went back to the 2nd level and walked down another passage. Just as he went down to the 3rd level, Murong-yu found that the gravity here seemed to be 10 times that of the 2nd level. And when he reached the 4th level, the gravity was several times that of the 3rd level. Murong-yu kept going down, and the lower he went, the stronger the gravity. And this floor was densely packed, and he didn't know how many floors there were. These floors should be where the cultivators who lived in the sculptures cultivated. Gravity was the most suitable for tempering the body. But now, there was a problem. Where were the cultivators who lived in the sculptures? Where did they all go? The heaven and earth essence chi in the sculptures was very rich, and there was a gravity layer used to cultivate the body. These people should be very strong. But why were they all gone? And even the city outside was ruined. What happened at that time? While he pondered, Murong-yu had already returned to the plaza at the very top, although he wanted to keep going and use the gravity to temper his body. But the most important thing now was to find a way to take this sculpture. As long as he took it into the Hichu, Luoshu, he could come in and cultivate whenever he wanted in the future. Now the sculpture was still outside. If he didn't take it, it might be taken by someone else. At that time, it would have nothing to do with Murong-yu. But how to take the sculpture? The way I see it, this statue is clearly an extremely huge puppet, he too suddenly said in a shocking voice. Puppet? Murong-yu was shocked at first, and then he thought about it. In fact, everything he saw already proved that this sculpture was a puppet. It was just that Murong-yu didn't think about it in this way. Such a huge puppet. What kind of terrifying thing would it take to drive it? Although the heaven and earth essence chi here was rich, it was definitely not used to drive the sculpture. To drive the sculpture, at least crystals were needed, and it had to be a large number of high-level crystals. The strength of such a huge puppet was definitely terrifying. But with Murong-yu's current crystals, it wouldn't last long before he became a pauper. But even if he couldn't drive it to kill enemies, it was very suitable for cultivation inside the puppet. Therefore, Murong-yu was determined to get his hands on the puppet. Moreover, if it was really a puppet, then there must be a way to take it away. It was just that he hadn't found a way yet. So, he began to check carefully and finally found something strange on the 10th floor of the functional area. Chapter 1988. The functional area, which was the side where the elders and controllers lived, was separated from the other side of the cultivation area. Murong-yu found an altar-like existence that was covered by arrays and restrictions on the 10th floor of the functional area. This should be the hub of the entire sculpture. This was because Murong-yu found some pits on this altar that seemed to be used to place crystals. However, after discovering this altar, he still couldn't control the sculpture. After some research, Murong-yu found that the altar was only used to add crystals to the sculpture. There must be other ways to control the sculpture. The method of controlling the sculpture is similar to controlling the origin weapon. You just need to refine it. Hichu's voice sounded in Murong-yu's mind. Murong-yu rolled his eyes. This sculpture was so powerful that it was at least at the insight realm. He couldn't refine it directly. If he could, he would have taken this sculpture away. However, this sculpture is not only made of extremely hard materials, but there are also various arrays instilled in it. Without these arrays, this sculpture would lose the meaning of being a puppet. I guess that if you can understand the arrays in the puppet, you should be able to control the puppet. Hichu continued. Murong-yu shook his head helplessly. He also thought of Hichu's method, but it was the stupidest method. In the end, Murong-yu, who couldn't think of a way, could only use this method. Fortunately, his understanding of arrays was very high, and he had Hichu, an array expert, to assist him. Moreover, these arrays in the puppet were quite amazing. While he was researching, he was also increasing Murong Yu's understanding of array formations. His knowledge of array formations was constantly increasing. Murong Yu, on the other hand, had taken control of a formation or restriction before he could fully understand it. Therefore, as time passed, he comprehended more and more formations and restrictions, and the number of formations and restrictions he could control increased as well. However, there were too many formations inside the puppet. Murong Yu was unable to fully control it in a short period of time. Outside the puppet, the leaders of the 10 great clans and the elders of the 8 great clans looked at the huge statue nervously. Apart from the cultivators of the Dongfang family, the experts of the other forces all had gloomy expressions on their faces. It's been half a year, and Murong Yu still hasn't appeared. I'm afraid that he has already collected all the treasures in the sculpture. A level 8 elder from the Thunderous Valley sighed. In their opinion, there must be a large number of treasures inside the sculpture, and the reason why Murong Yu hadn't come out for so long was definitely because he was breaking the restrictions that seal the treasures. It had been half a year. Even if there were treasures, they should have been taken by Murong Yu by now. The more they thought about it, the more pain they felt, because they also had a share of those treasures. Now, all of them had been plundered by Murong Yu. However, they could only be anxious. There was nothing they could do. They were unable to get close to the puppets. Once they got close, they would be repelled by the power of the puppet. Boom! A depressed level 8 elder threw a punch at the puppet across the air. Originally, he wanted to vent his depression, but he was soon shocked. The power is weakening. The level 8 elder cried out in alarm. This was because he realized that although the puppet's power had crushed his power, it was obvious that the power from the puppet had weakened a lot. This made him very surprised. At the same time, the others were also very surprised. What did the weakening of the power mean? It meant that they could get close to the puppet and even go outside the puppet. As long as the obstruction of the power was gone, how could Murong Yu, Dongfang Lang, and the others stop them? In contrast to their joy, Dongfang Lang and the others' faces were gloomy. Then, Dongfang Lang directly conveyed the changes here to Murong Yu. What? The power has weakened? Murong Yu was also shocked, but he soon calmed down. Even if the puppet could no longer release its power, it was almost impossible for those people to enter here. Even a profound underworld realm expert couldn't break the door and enter. Not to mention AI, Feiqi, and the others. He was able to enter because of the seamless underworld's sect master. However, he was a little surprised. Why did the power of the puppet become weaker? It should be because you're controlling these formations and restrictions. The formations and restrictive spells under your control can no longer merge perfectly with the original formations, so the power they can release will become weaker and weaker. My guess is that the more formations and restrictions you control, the weaker the power of the puppet's attacks will be. In the end, when you completely control these formations and restrictions, the puppet will return to normal. Hichu analyzed for Murong Yu. Murong Yu nodded. Even if this was the case, he didn't have to worry about anything. Therefore, he told Dongfang Lang and the others not to do anything. They only needed to watch the show from afar. Instead, he continued to study the spirit array or restriction inside the puppet. Sure enough, as he controlled more and more formations and restrictions, the power released by the puppet became weaker and weaker. After 10 years, the puppet almost didn't have the power to release it. This proved that Murong Yu had controlled most of the formations and restrictions inside the puppet. Of course, this also meant that AI, Feiqi, and the others could approach the puppet without any hindrance. It was their first time coming into close contact with the puppet. AI, Feiqi, and the others immediately attacked. They wanted to drill a hole in the puppet's body to enter the huge puppet. However, they were upset because they couldn't even leave a white mark on the puppet, even when they attacked with all their might. One could imagine how terrifying the puppet was. The more it was so, the more greedy they were. Since they couldn't break it, they could only go up. Previously, they had seen Murong Yu enter through one of the puppet's ears. Therefore, they walked up to the puppet's ear in a mighty manner. However, no matter how hard they tried, they still couldn't find a way to enter. This made them feel depressed. Nevertheless, they could only brace themselves and try to break through by force. However, it was destined to be a waste of effort. Inside the puppet, a faint smile gradually appeared on Murong-Yu's face. Only the last formation is left. Once I control this formation, this huge puppet will officially follow my surname. Murong-Yu laughed, but he didn't stop studying the formation. Rumble. Not long after, the huge puppet shook violently. An extremely powerful force shot out from the puppet's body. Bang! 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 AI, Feichi, and the others were caught off guard and were sent flying by the force. They should rejoice that the force that sent them flying was not that strong. It was only enough to send them flying. Otherwise, it would not be impossible for all of them to be killed. I finally gained control of the puppet. Murong-Yu laughed. By now, he had already gained control of all the arrays and restrictions. His divine will could travel through these arrays and restrictions, and he could freely scan every inch of the puppet. It could be said that from this moment onwards, Murong-Yu had complete control over the huge puppet. Shrink from me. With a thought from Murong-Yu, the indomitable puppet rapidly shrank. In the blink of an eye, it had shrunk to the size of an ordinary person. However, Murong-Yu, who was in the puppet's space, did not realize that the space inside had shrunk correspondingly. What's going on? AI, Feichi, and the others were stunned when they saw that the puppet had shrunk countless times. They couldn't react in time. While they were still in a daze, Murong-Yu had already walked out of the puppet's space. He waved his hand and kept the puppet into the Hichu Luo Shu. After controlling the puppet, Murong-Yu could control it as he wished. It was no problem for him to keep it in the Hichu Luo Shu. He kept the statue. AI, Feichi, and the others finally reacted. They couldn't help but be envious of the puppet that they couldn't destroy and the various treasures that might be inside. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. One figure after another immediately shot over and surrounded Murong-Yu. Dongfang Lang and the others were one step ahead of them. They protected Murong-Yu and looked at AI, Feichi, and the others with murderous intent. Murong-Yu, hand over the statue and everything you got from this broken city. Otherwise, you will not be able to leave the Lai Guang secret realm alive. AI Feichi's face was gloomy, and he looked at Murong-Yu with murderous intent. Murong-Yu looked at AI Feichi and the other leaders with disdain. Now that he had a puppet that was comparable to the Netherworld realm and 3 incarnation sealing beads, he wasn't afraid even if a Netherworld realm expert came, let alone AI Feichi and the others. If they forced him into a corner, he would immediately use Li Bao's incarnation sealing bead to kill all of them. AI Feichi, do you have any shame? A level 9 creation realm expert actually dares to threaten a level 3 bright world realm cultivator? If I were you, I would have killed myself. Dongfang Lang sneered and looked at AI Feichi with disdain. AI Feichi's face was a little ugly, and the other leaders of the other 8 forces were also a little gloomy. Dongfang Lang, let's not talk about this nonsense. Today, Murong-Yu will hand over all the treasures, and the people of the Dongfang family can leave safely. Otherwise, all of you will stay in the Lai Guang secret realm. The Hallmaster of Shock Hall said in a deep voice. Although the others didn't say anything, it was obvious that they had the same mentality as AI Feichi and the others. If Murong-Yu didn't hand over the treasures, they would definitely join forces to kill Murong-Yu and the others. Dongfang Lang's face was very ugly. If they really wanted to attack, the Dongfang family would probably be wiped out today. There was no other way. The other party had too many experts, 8 times more than them. No matter how strong they were no match for them. Chapter 1989. Murong-Yu's eyes flashed coldly as he looked at everyone. At this moment, he really wanted to throw out an incarnation sealing bead and kill all of them. However, if he killed the leaders of the 9 major forces and the 8th grade elders, this part of the universe would be in chaos. First, the major forces would fight for power. Then, the major forces would definitely fight among themselves. In the end, the people in this part of the universe would have no way of making a living. This was very disadvantageous to Murong Yu's control of their forces. Murong Yu wanted to control these 10 major forces, as well as gradually control the lunar sect and the solar sect, and become the ruler of the solar system. The solar system was his, and he did not want to see a large number of cultivators die. This would weaken the overall strength of the solar system. Therefore, although he was angry, he held back and did not use the incarnation sealing bead. However, if he did not use the incarnation sealing bead, how could he leave this place? Enter Hichu Luoshu? Not to mention that the space here was unstable due to the power of the major forces. It was impossible to enter. Even if they could enter, it would be Murong Yu alone. Dongfang Lang and the others would not be able to make it in time. Once Murong Yu escaped, the people of the 9 major forces would definitely attack Dongfang Lang and the others at the same time. How could Dongfang Lang and the others be a match for them? Therefore, thousands of thoughts flashed through Murong Yu's mind as he thought about how to leave this place. However, he did not have a perfect solution. It seems that I can only activate the puppet and kill my way out. Murong Yu thought to himself and was about to use the puppet. The reason why he did not use it directly was that Murong Yu did not want to expose the fact that the puppet was a puppet. If such a powerful puppet was exposed, the people of the solar sect would probably come knocking on his door. Although Murong Yu was not afraid, he did not have that many crystals. Without crystals to power it, the puppet was just a pile of scrap metal. Rumble. Just as Murong Yu was about to bring out the puppet, a series of earth-shattering sounds suddenly rang out. Murong Yu and the others were shocked. They looked in the direction of the sound, only to see the void far away from the broken city collapsing in large chunks. Moreover, after the void collapsed, it turned into endless chaos and did not recover. Everyone's expression changed. This space was about to collapse. If they couldn't leave before the collapse arrived, they would be devoured by the endless chaos and die without a burial place. Go! The master of the Wang family could not be bothered to attack Murong Yu. After yelling out, he grabbed the strongest person in the younger generation of the Wang family and flew toward the exit of the secret realm. At the same time, the people from the other forces had the same reaction. The treasures on Murong Yu's body were indeed very tempting, but he needed to be alive to use them. As a result, they had to escape first and think of a way to kill Murong Yu later. Moreover, even if they left the scorching secret realm, they would appear in the terrifying desert. By then, Murong Yu would not be able to escape. Let's go too. Murong Yu yelled with a sunken face. The collapse of the scorching secret realm should have something to do with the puppet. Otherwise, why would it only collapse after Murong Yu took the puppet? Of course, the collapse of the space was extremely beneficial to Murong Yu. It directly came into contact with the crisis of the Dongfang family. However, Murong Yu discovered that the collapse of the space in the scorching secret realm made the space in the secret realm extremely unstable. He could not enter the Hichu Luoshu at all. If he tried to force his way in, he would probably charge into the turbulent space. The turbulent space in the endless starry sky was much more terrifying than the saint's world. If he entered with his current body, he would probably be torn to shreds. As a result, he could only fly out like the others. Swish! Swish! Dongfang Lang wanted to grab Murong Yu. However, as soon as his big hand reached out, his vision blurred and he lost sight of Murong Yu. In another flash, Murong Yu's figure disappeared from his sight. What a terrifying speed! Everyone who saw this scene was stunned. Murong Yu's speed was too terrifying. He was probably almost as fast as Dongfang Lang and the others. Originally, Murong Yu's speed was not so fast, even if he used all his strength. However, after his soul broke through to the peak of the chaotic realm, his understanding of the 9 symbolic words deepened. The power of the army character formula was even more terrifying. Therefore, when he used the army character formula with all his strength, his speed was comparable to Dongfang Lang and the others. The collapse of the space rapidly came from all directions. However, there was still some distance to the exit of the scorching secret realm. With their speed, they should be able to get out in time. Swish, swish, swish. Everyone's only goal was to rush out of the scorching secret realm. Therefore, when they used all their strength, they quickly crossed the distance that would have taken them many days to cross and appeared at the exit. At this time, the place where the space collapsed was very close to the exit. It was only about 1,000 miles away. In less than a few breaths of time, the exit would collapse and cease to exist. Morong-yu was at the back again. This was because he did not want to use all his speed. Therefore, after verifying its terrifying speed, he let Dongfang Lang grab it and use it to paralyze the powerhouses of the other 9 forces. Therefore, the Dongfang clan was the last to rush into the scorching secret realm. Boom! Just as Dongfang Lang and the others rushed into the scorching secret realm, a huge hand that contained a terrifying power slammed down from above, with a terrifying aura that could destroy heaven and earth. Bastard! Dongfang Lang's face instantly turned pale. He roared and slammed his palm down. At the same time, Dongfang Lang and the others attacked one after another. They unleashed their strongest attacks at the huge hand. Obviously, they did not know which bastard was plotting against Morong-yu and the rest of the Dongfang clan. They slammed their palm down. Boom! After an earth-shattering explosion, the huge hand that was slamming down was shattered. However, what made Dongfang Lang and the others feel despair was that the scorching secret realm's exit had also been shattered by their attacks. There was no exit. At this time, the void that they were in collapsed violently. Before Dongfang Lang and the others could react, they were swallowed by the endless chaos. The space continued to collapse. In less than half a day, the entire scorching secret realm had completely collapsed and turned into chaos. From then on, the scorching secret realm no longer existed. Outside the scorching secret realm, except for the powerhouses who had died in the ruined city, everyone from the 9 forces gathered together. However, the powerhouses from the 8 forces looked at AI Feiqi with a gloomy expression. AI Feiqi, what do you mean? How dare you kill Dongfang Lang and the others? Don't you know that Morong-yu has a treasure on him? The Hall Master Shock Hall looked at AI Feiqi with a murderous look. Everyone else looked at AI Feiqi with the same expression. They wanted to slap Morong-yu to death. AI Feiqi was the first to escape. He was supposed to be the first to leave the scorching secret realm. However, when he reached the exit, he suddenly slowed down. The others did not think too much about it. They just thought that AI Feiqi's old injury had relapsed. Moreover, they could not even protect themselves now, so they could not be bothered with AI Feiqi. However, what they never expected was that this fellow had deliberately stayed behind. He wanted to plot against Dongfang Lang and the others. Naturally, AI Feiqi couldn't kill Dongfang Lang and the others with a single slap. However, the space happened to collapse at that time. As long as AI Feiqi broke the space treasure, the space would naturally collapse and swallow AI Feiqi and the others. It was obvious that AI Feiqi had achieved his goal. Although his expression was cold, everyone could see the joy hidden in the depths of his eyes. This bastard had taken his revenge. However, Morong-yu was also dead. Morong-yu had many insight grade treasures on him. Now, those treasures were buried in the endless chaos along with Morong-yu. They did not even get a single strand of his treasures. This was the reason why they were furious. I don't know what you're talking about. I just didn't have enough strength just now. I just wanted to borrow the strength of that slap. It's up to you whether you believe me or not. We'll take our leave first. AI Feiqi sneered. Then he soared into the sky and shot out of the desert. This old bastard must be going to wipe out the Dongfang family's forces. We can't get Morong-yu's treasures, but we can at least get a share of the Dongfang family's territory. The Hall Master of Shock Hall sneered and immediately left with his elders. The other forces also left one after another. Then, were Morong-yu, Dongfang Lang, and the others dead? Time returned to the moment when the spatial passage was destroyed. At this moment, Dongfang Lang, Dongfang Yuan, and the others are in despair. Without the passage, they could not leave at all. If it were any other time, they might have a chance to leave. However, the Guang's secret realm was constantly collapsing. How could they have the time to leave? In the blink of an eye, they would be devoured by the endless chaos. While everyone was in despair and panic, Yu was extremely calm. At the same time, he summoned the puppet with a thought. Walala. Under Yu's control, a large number of crystals were poured on the puppet's altar by Yu. In the next moment, Yu directly burned the crystals. Rumble, the puppet, which was originally just a sculpture, began to move at this moment. However, there was not enough time. The puppet could not transfer Yu and the others into its body in time. Therefore, the puppet only opened its arms and hugged Yu and the others. The puppet bent down and tried its best to protect Yu and the others. Chapter 1990. Rumble. At this moment, Yu and the others felt as if they were leaves being hammered by a violent storm, or like a lone boat in a stormy sea that could be torn into pieces at any time. My lord, what is this? Feeling the crazy impact on their bodies, Dongfang Lang and the others finally reacted and saw the existence of the puppet. Although the puppet was several feet tall at this time, its appearance was very different from its previous indomitable appearance. Moreover, Dongfang Lang and the others were in the puppet's arms and could not see the puppet's appearance clearly. That was why they asked. It's a puppet. Yu gave a concise reply and didn't say anything else. In fact, he did not have extra energy to speak. Although the puppet was different from an ordinary origin item, it did not require Yu's own strength to activate it. In principle, as long as Yu had enough origin crystals, the puppet could erupt with the strongest power. However, Yu's origin crystals did not seem to be of a very high level. The mountain-like origin crystals were used up in a few breaths of time. One could imagine how big the puppet's appetite was. Moreover, the puppet not only had to protect them, but also resist the bombardment of the endless chaotic power. The bombardment of power was like a stormy sea. It was the power generated after the collapse of the space. At this time, the inexplicable power was strangling the puppet's body at an incomparably fast speed. This accelerated the consumption of the puppet's power. In just a few breaths of time, 1/10 of Yu's origin crystals were used up. If he could not get out of here before all the origin crystals were used up, they would all die in the end. Although the puppet was powerful, without the origin crystals to drive it, it was just a piece of relatively high-level scrap iron and could not protect them at all. Therefore, Yu controlled the puppet and began to break through the space, flying forward. In fact, Yu and the others could already travel in the void. However, they could only travel on the surface of the space. Now, they were already in the depths of the space. If it were any other time, they would still be able to travel to the outside world. But now that they were surrounded by violent energy, they would be torn to pieces by the violent energy before they could even rush out. However, the effect of burning a large amount of essence crystals was still very obvious. At this moment, the puppet unleashed a strength that was even more powerful than Dongfang Lang and the others. With a swish sound, the puppet had already disappeared on the spot. When he reappeared, before Yu and the others could even breathe a sigh of relief, their faces suddenly changed. This was because they discovered that they had already charged into the turbulent space. Rumble, a power that was even more violent than the previous attacks, came from all directions, striking the puppet. The impact caused the puppet's body to erupt with dazzling light. Although Yu and the others were tightly held in the arms of the puppet, the terrifying impact still caused their blood to churn and their bones to almost shatter. During this process, the crystals were being consumed at an even more terrifying rate than before. Yu estimated that his remaining essence crystals could only last for 10 breaths of time at most. In other words, they only had 10 breaths of time to escape from the turbulent space. If they couldn't escape within 10 breaths of time, then they would be buried in the turbulent space, dying without a burial place. Although Dongfang Lang and the others didn't know what the specific situation was, seeing Yu's grim expression, their hearts were also in their mouths. My lord, the white spot in front should be something similar to a continent. Let's rush over. When Dongfang Lang was about to speak, he happened to see a white light in front of him. There was also a continent in the turbulent space. Murong nodded slightly and had already controlled the puppet to shoot toward the white light. During this process, Murong discovered that the white light in front of him was also shooting at an extremely terrifying speed. Murong was taken aback, but he didn't think too much about it. He could only clench his teeth and rush over. In the turbulent space, Murong couldn't enter Hichu Luoshu even if he wanted to. In other words, this was the only way for him now. Even if there was a dead end in front of him, he could only go on. One breath at a time, 2 breaths of time. Murong and the others were getting closer and closer to the white light. And the closer they were, the clearer they could see what the white light was. It was a small continent. Furthermore, that small continent was shooting over at an extremely fast speed. But even if both sides were extremely fast, Murong's consumption of crystals was faster. 10 breaths of time was about to pass, but the distance between the two sides was still very far. After 10 breaths of time, all of Murong's crystals had been consumed. At this time, except for the star core, Murong had nothing else to provide for the puppet to devour. However, Murong still didn't have any hesitation. With a thought, he took out the star core and was about to burn it. With the huge power contained in the star core, the puppet should be able to hold on for a long time. Although it was too wasteful, if he died, what was the use of having more star cores? However, just as Murong was about to burn the star core, he changed his mind. Because the distance between him and the white light was extremely close. I hope the puppet can withstand the bombardment of the turbulent space. As Murong pondered, he immediately controlled the puppet to shrink its body and charge at the white light at an incomparably fast speed. However, the star core was still inside the puppet. As long as the puppet couldn't hold on, Murong would burn the star core immediately. Rumble, without the protection of the energy, the turbulent space bombarded the puppet. Without the protection of the energy, the puppet couldn't withstand or remove the energy. Therefore, after the puppet took away a part of the energy, more of it was directly used on Murong and the others. At that moment, Dongfang Lang and the others unleashed all of their strength to protect Murong while they forcefully resisted the incoming attacks. Puff, puff, puff. In the first moment, Dongfang Yuan and the other level 8 elders were bombarded and spat out blood. In the next instant, the bodies of Dongfang Yuan and the others were bombarded, leaving ghastly wounds on their bodies. At this time, Murong had also gone crazy, and the tree of life in his body was trembling violently. Streams of incomparably powerful life force rushed out like a torrent and quickly poured into the bodies of Dongfang Yuan and the others, repairing their physical bodies. However, the difference in strength between the two sides was too great. The effect of the life force couldn't achieve the expected effect at all. It was better than nothing. In the third moment, Dongfang Yuan and the others' bodies were about to be shattered. They could only resist for another moment at most. In the fifth moment, they would be shattered into pieces. Once they died, Murong would also die. Even the puppet couldn't protect him. Therefore, Murong couldn't help but sigh and was about to ignite his star core. Dongfang Yuan and the others were the top experts of the Dongfang family. If they died, the Dongfang family would be useless. Therefore, he had to protect the Dongfang family. However, at this time, Murong felt the pressure on his body suddenly disappear. In the next moment, an earth-shattering sound was heard. Then, Murong and the others felt themselves being thrown out and scattered in all directions. Bang! 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 In the end, Murong fell to the ground. However, at this time, the terrifying energy had disappeared without a trace. In its place was an extremely rich chi of heaven and earth. We've entered that small continent. After surviving the disaster, even Dongfang Lang couldn't help but exclaim. Murong looked around and realized that he was already in a peach blossom land. The surroundings were green and shady, with small bridges and flowing water. The scenery was beautiful. The most important thing was that the chi of heaven and earth here was very rich and of a high level. The chi of heaven and earth of 4 yuan star was simply the difference between an ant and a giant when compared to the chi of heaven and earth here. The chi of heaven and earth here is too rich. Chapter 1991. Generally, the name of a place, such as a place where a powerhouse cultivated, would generally be named as a cave mansion or a cave heaven. At most, they would use words like a small world or a big world as suffixes. Rising Sundown Mansion. This rising sun should be the name or title of the master of this continent. However, it was the first time that Murong Yu had heard of the word Dao Mansion. He had never heard of it before. Moreover, he had a feeling that the word Dao was more powerful than any realm he had ever heard of. Of course, this was just a vague feeling in his heart. Whether this was the case, or whether this name had no special meaning at all, Murong Yu did not know. This continent was very big. Because he was worried that there might be danger inside, Murong Yu did not go in alone to explore. Of course, he was not worried about himself, but about Dongfang Lang and the others. Once they got separated from Murong Yu, it would be difficult to find them. Murong Yu did not want any accidents to happen to them. If Murong Yu had been alone, he would have already entered the depths. Many days later, Dongfang Lang and the others recovered their strength one after another. The speed of healing was dozens of times faster than before. There was no other way. The world's essence chi here was so rich. Even if they did not take the initiative to heal their injuries, their ability to heal themselves automatically became extremely high. Dongfang Lang and the others were also confused about the 4 people from the Rising Sundown Mansion. In fact, because Murong Yu controlled their souls, their knowledge was all under Murong Yu's control. Murong Yu had gathered the strengths of many schools. Coupled with his own knowledge and Hichu's, his knowledge had long surpassed Dongfang Lang and the others. Therefore, the group did not delay. They identified a direction and shot toward the deeper part of the continent. The deeper they went, the richer and more advanced the world's essence chi was. In the end, Dongfang Lang and the others were not willing to go deeper, because they all wanted to stop and cultivate. There was no other way. The world's essence chi was too tempting for them. They simply could not refuse. However, they were soon unable to go deeper. It was not that they had reached the end. They were still far from the end. It was as if there was no end here. They couldn't see the editor from afar. However, an invisible wall blocked in front of Murong Yu and the others, preventing them from taking a step forward. Murong Yu's physique was also not of any use, because this was not an array formation at all, but pure power. Moreover, only a Netherworld Insight Realm expert could barely break through these barriers and enter a deeper level. It was as if the void here had been divided into different regions. The area Murong Yu was in was the lowest level area, while the deeper areas were higher level. As for why they thought of dividing the regions, Murong Yu guessed that there were 2 reasons. One of the reasons was that the Heaven-Earth Yuan Chi inside was denser and more advanced. Once someone like Murong Yu, whose cultivation and strength had not reached the required level, entered, it would be very easy for them to explode. Another reason was that there might be terrifying existences inside. Those who had not reached a certain level of cultivation would only be courting death if they went in. However, who was this Shengyang? Why was there such a high-level Dao Mansion? And why was it divided into different regions? Since they couldn't go deeper, Murong Yu and the others could only look out. They explored left and right. A few days later, Murong Yu found that this place was also divided into 2 regions. On one side was the region where they were. There was no danger, and there were no ferocious beasts. However, on the other side, there were all kinds of ferocious beasts. However, the highest realm of the ferocious beasts, there was only a half-step Netherworld Insight Realm existence. It was unknown whether these ferocious beasts were unable to break through to a higher realm in their lifetime, or after breaking through, they were limited by the rules here and automatically entered a deeper level. On the other side was the cultivation area. Generally, one could fight with ferocious beasts to increase one's combat strength and experience. This Shengyang Dao mansion is simply a training ground, Dongfang Lang said with a sigh. Murong Yu, Dongfang Yuanya, and the others nodded slightly. They thought so too. Then who was this Shengyang? Why did he do this? This question appeared in the hearts of Murong Yu and the others, but they couldn't answer it in the end. Since this is a training ground, then is there a treasure of the creation realm in the main hall? Dongfang Lang said with a smile, his eyes shining. In the safe area, there was a palace. This was something they had discovered before. However, they didn't enter the main hall at that time. Now that they had finished exploring, they naturally had to go inside the palace. After a while, Murong Yu and the others appeared in front of the main hall. This was a huge, ancient palace that stood quietly between heaven and earth. No one knew how long it had been there. However, the door of the main hall was still closed. Murong Yu took the lead and walked to the front of the door. Those in the creation realm can enter. Those who are lower or higher than the creation realm are not allowed to enter. Otherwise, they will be killed without mercy. Suddenly, a low voice sounded in the ears of Murong Yu and the others, giving them a fright. This voice should be coming from one of the restrictions that Sheng Yang left here. As long as it senses that someone is coming, this voice should be triggered. This is just a small trick. After Dongfang Lang was shocked, he immediately reacted and explained to Murong Yu. Murong Yu nodded, then pushed open the door of the palace and walked in. Whoosh! The moment Murong Yu entered the room, he felt a huge power similar to divine thought sweep across his body. It should be scanning his strength. At this moment, Murong Yu's heart sank, and he couldn't help but feel a little nervous. However, the powerful power soon disappeared in his body. It should have checked that Murong Yu's strength met the requirements of the main hall. If Murong Yu didn't have any problems, Dongfang Lang and the others naturally didn't have any problems. A group of people walked in one after another. There was no other space in the main hall. It was the same as it looked on the surface. However, in addition to the main hall in the center, there were many rooms next to it. On the door of each room, there were words such as weapons, elixirs, book collection pavilion, treasures of heaven and earth, and so on. Obviously, those rooms were all kinds of treasure troves. Murong Yu and the others came to the room with the words weapons and then pushed the door in. The door was easily pushed open and there were no guards set up. However, there was another space in the house, and there were countless origin weapons placed in it. All of them were origin weapons of the creation realm. Everyone can only choose one origin weapon, otherwise you will be killed. The low voice sounded again. This time, Murong Yu and the others were used to it and were not frightened. After a hurried glance, Murong Yu and the others didn't stay, but entered the elixir storehouse at the side. Similarly, the voice also appeared. Only one bottle of elixirs could be taken out of here, otherwise they would be killed. However, the elixirs could be taken in the main hall without restriction. The book collection pavilion was even more exaggerated. They could only be read in the main hall and couldn't be taken out, otherwise they would be killed. Of course, the other party didn't emphasize that they couldn't be copied. In general, although there were many treasures here, there weren't many that could be taken away. Moreover, they were all treasures of the creation realm. However, the treasures contained in this small palace were basically incomparable to those of a small family, like the Dongfang family. It was at least 100 million times more than what the Dongfang family had, or even more. Even if all the treasures in the entire solar system were put together, it wouldn't be 1/10 of what this palace had. That was terrifying. That rising sun was not just a little terrifying. This is only the outermost area. If I'm not wrong, the deeper areas should be at the insight realm. The treasures there should be at the insight realm. Although we can only take one out, those elixirs can help us quickly improve our strength and break through to a higher realm faster. Dongfang Lang said excitedly. However, when can we break through to the insight realm? Moreover, we can't always be here. Once we leave, how can we come back in the future? Even if there are more treasures here, it's useless if we can't come back. Dongfang Yuan said with a frown. Dongfang Lang and the others immediately frowned. Dongfang Yuan was telling the truth. Murong Yu didn't care about their worries. With his ability, he could come here at any time. However, he suddenly thought of a problem. Why did the various settings of Rising Sun seem to be training disciples? Could it be that he was selecting disciples of inheritance? After all, the treasures here were huge, but they weren't allowed to take them out. In other words, Rising Sun was giving many people a chance. If they could take them away, then as long as one person came in, that person would find a way to plunder all these treasures. It was because of this that Murong Yu had this idea in his mind. If it was really selecting disciples of inheritance, if it were anyone else, they would have been ecstatic. However, after Murong Yu had experienced so many disciples of inheritance that he didn't quite believe it. However, no matter what, he had to get the benefits here. Moreover, the other party's realm must be very high. Even if it was just a fake training of disciples of inheritance, they would definitely not make a move. All right, let's seize this opportunity to quickly improve our strength and then leave this place. I'm guessing that it won't be long before the other 9 forces make a move on our Dongfang family. Murong Yu waved his hand and said, "We can leave this place." Dongfang Lang and the others were excited, extremely excited. "My lord, after we leave this place, can we still come back?" Dongfang Yuan asked cautiously. Murong Yu smiled faintly. "Of course, no problem. All right, everyone, quickly go and cultivate." As he spoke, Murong Yu had already burrowed into a room in the main hall that stored origin crystals. There were as many origin crystals as there were grains of sand in the Ganges. Unfortunately, these origin crystals couldn't be taken away. Otherwise, Murong Yu would have kept all of them in Hichu's expansion book. However, since they couldn't be taken away, they could be used here. Murong Yu could use them to break through his realm. Chapter 1992. After Murong Yu entered the Origin Crystal Vault, he sat cross-legged in the middle of the Origin Crystals that were as big as a mountain. The Origin Qi of heaven and earth in the Shenyang Dao Mansion was very rich, and the Origin Qi of heaven and earth in the entire vault was almost materialized due to the unintentional energy emitted by the Origin Crystals. If it were an ordinary person, their cultivation level would have been raised. Even Murong Yu could feel his strength increasing by a tiny bit within a breath's time. He had no choice, his appetite was too big. However, if Murong Yu cultivated here, he would only need 1/10 or even 1/100th of the time to break through to the next cultivation level, even if he did not refine the origin crystals. One could imagine how rich the origin Qi of heaven and earth was. Moreover, Murong Yu realized that the origin crystals here were all middle-grade origin crystals. Origin crystals were divided into 5 grades: low grade, middle grade, upper grade, supreme grade, and supreme grade. The origin crystals that Murong Yu had obtained previously, including those from the Lin clan's 3rd Shaolin, were mostly low-grade origin crystals. There were a few middle-grade origin crystals. According to Murong Yu's estimation, the difference between low-grade origin crystals and middle-grade origin crystals was at least 100 times. That was very terrifying. Therefore, the higher the grade, the lesser the origin crystals. However, the number of middle-grade origin crystals here was like the sand in the Ganges River. This was only the outermost layer of the Shenyang Dao Mansion. What about the deeper layers? Would there be upper grade, supreme grade, and supreme grade origin crystals? These thoughts only flitted through Murong Yu's mind for a brief moment. Soon, he adjusted his state of mind. He opened his mouth wide and took a deep breath. Walala, numerous fist-sized mid-grade origin crystals turned into torrents of origin crystals, crazily surging into his body. Then, they were transferred into the chaos furnace. At this moment, the chaos furnace began to tremble violently. An indescribable power kept appearing out of thin air, shattering one mid-grade origin crystal after another. Streams of pure energy gushed out of the primal chaos furnace like a flood and poured into Murong Yu's body. Immediately, Murongyu's strength increased at a speed visible to the naked eye. Originally, Murongyu had already reached Bright World Realm Level 3. After devouring a large number of mid-grade origin crystals, his realm quickly reached the peak of Bright World Realm Level 3. Not long after, his body shook violently, and he broke through again. He had reached the 4th level of the Bright World Realm. While Murongyu was cultivating on the other side of the crystal warehouse, Dongfang Lang and the others were also cultivating. However, they didn't have something as heaven-defying as the furnace of primal chaos, so they weren't as monstrous as Murongyu. However, the dense and high-grade origin artifacts here were extremely effective even to half-step Nether Enlightenment realm experts. Therefore, the strength of Dongfang Lang and the others also increased at a terrifying speed. Dongfang Lang was a little better. He was already at the 9th stage of the creation realm. At this stage, it was already very difficult to break through. Therefore, his improvement was not very obvious. However, it was very obvious for Dongfang Yuan and the other level 8 elders. After Murongyu broke through, they also broke through one after another and all rushed into the 9th stage of the creation realm. Under normal circumstances, only 2 or 3 level 8 elders and controllers would be present at the exchange of the top 10 forces this time. However, because of the exploration of the Lai Guang's secret realm, all the level 8 elders of the Dongfang family came. Moreover, in the Lai Guang's secret realm, the Dongfang family was very careful, so no level 8 elders died. In other words, now 18 level 8 elders had successfully broken through and become level 9 elders. In the solar system, apart from the Sun Sect and the Sun Sect, the Dongfang family was the first force to have 19 level 9 creation realm experts. They were definitely the 3rd strongest force in the solar system. With this strength, even if the 9 major forces such as the Thunder Valley joined forces, they were no match for the Dongfang family. However, even so, the gap between the Dongfang family, the Sun Sect, and the Lunar Sect was still a little big. Dongfang Yuan and the others were also clearly aware of this. Therefore, they didn't immediately stop cultivating after breaking through. Instead, they continued to cultivate. Time passed, and everyone's realm was increasing. At this moment, in the Flying Wolf Star. The Flying Wolf Star was the headquarters of the Dongfang family, one of the top 10 forces. Usually, it was very lively and bustling with people coming and going. It was extremely prosperous. However, today, the Flying Wolf Star was in a mess. From afar, the entire Flying Wolf Star was surrounded by a huge white shield. Inside the shield, the disciples of the Dongfang family looked outside nervously. Their eyes were filled with hatred, and their faces were filled with despair. Outside the Flying Wolf Star, countless experts were sneering at the Flying Wolf Star. Brats of the Dongfang family, your family leader, and all the level 8 elders have fallen. If you don't surrender now, when will you? A man walked out from the crowd and sneered at the Flying Wolf Star. Bullsh asterisk T. How can you shameless people kill our family leader and level 8 elders? A disciple of the Dongfang family roared. That's right. Why don't you look in the mirror? Trash from the 8 forces. You're only fit to attack the Dongfang family when our family leader and level 8 elders aren't around. Once our family leader returns, it'll be your doomsday, another disciple of the Dongfang family said hatefully. If it weren't for the fact that they knew they were no match for the 9 forces outside, they would have rushed out and fought. That's right, the 9 forces were attacking them outside. Back then, after leaving the Lai Guang's secret realm, the 9 forces immediately sent troops to the Sirius Star. They started attacking the Dongfang family's outer sphere of influence. Under the combined forces of the 9 forces, they had already attacked the Dongfang family's headquarters, the Flying Wolf Star, in half a year. However, the Flying Wolf Star was the headquarters of the Dongfang family that had inherited countless reincarnation gold. How could it be so easy to break through? After the Astral Guardian formation was activated, even the 9 forces couldn't break through it in a short period of time. However, although the Astral Guardian formation of the Flying Wolf Star wasn't broken, the disciples of the Dongfang family inside didn't have it easy. When the Dongfang family was attacked, many disciples of the Dongfang family had secretly returned to the Sirius star. Therefore, there were many times more people on the Sirius star than usual. The more people there were, the more resources they would need. Moreover, many of them were injured. As a result, a lot of the Dongfang family's resources were consumed. In addition, the Astral Guardian formation also needed crystals to provide energy. These resources weren't replenished, so the people of the Dongfang family were just living off their savings. However, there was a limit to their savings, and they couldn't hold on for too long. Elder, one with a patriarch and the others return. A level 6 elder asked a level 7 elder. Dongfang Lang wasn't in the Dongfang family, and the level 8 elders weren't there either. Naturally, the ones who carried the banner were the 7th rank elders. After being asked, the level 7 elder also shook his head. The reason why they were sure that Dongfang Lang and the others weren't dead was that their soul jade slips hadn't shattered yet. However, that only told them that Dongfang Lang and the others weren't dead. However, it didn't tell them where Dongfang Lang was and what he was doing now. It also didn't tell them when Dongfang Lang and the others would return. Don't worry, the patriarch and the others will definitely return. Perhaps he felt that he was too pessimistic, so the level 7 elder added another sentence. However, he also knew that even if Dongfang Lang and the others returned, so what? With their strength, they weren't a match for the other families at all. He couldn't understand why the 9 forces would join forces to attack the Dongfang family. Did the Dongfang family offend them? Let's do it. I'd like to see how many crystals the Dongfang family has and how long they can keep this astral protection array running, AI Feichi said faintly. Then, the Thunderclap Valley began to attack. Suddenly, waves of power poured toward the Flying Wolf Star like stormy waves. At the same time, the other 8 forces also began to attack. The astral protection array of the Flying Wolf Star was undoubtedly powerful. It only trembled violently after resisting the attacks of all the powerhouses from the 8 forces. Under the protection of the array, the people of the Dongfang family weren't hurt at all. However, the high-level elders of the Dongfang family looked extremely gloomy. This was because every round of attack by the 9 forces consumed a lot of the Dongfang family's resources. If this continued, the Dongfang family wouldn't be able to hold on for long, even if they exhausted everything. At most, they would only be able to hold on for 10 days. After 10 days, if Dongfang Lang and the others didn't return, the Dongfang family might never exist. Even if Dongfang Lang and the others returned, they wouldn't be able to turn the tables. As time passed, the Dongfang family's resources became less and less. On the 9th day, the Dongfang family's resources were basically exhausted. A few days ago, in order to reduce the consumption of resources, the Dongfang family had already shrunk the astral protection array and only covered the surface of the Flying Wolf Star. If this continued, their astral protection array would continue to shrink and eventually only protect the core area of the Dongfang family and the core disciples of the Dongfang family. Even so, the outcome wasn't optimistic. Perhaps because of the impending disaster, the disciples of the Dongfang family gritted their teeth and rushed forward. They didn't risk their lives to fight against the 9 forces. Instead, they frantically poured their energy into the astral protection array and forcibly operated it. Fight against the people of the 8 forces? Everyone in the Dongfang family had this idea. However, no one put it into practice. This was because the difference in strength between the 2 sides was too great. The most powerful person in the Dongfang family was only a 7th level elder, while the 9 forces had a large group of 8th level elders and even 9 old monsters of the 9th level of the creation realm. With the current strength of the Dongfang family, they would probably be blasted into pieces before they could rush out. Therefore, no one rushed out to fight. They only defended with all their might. However, it was precisely because everyone directly poured their energy into the array that every time the array was attacked, they also suffered a certain amount of damage. Therefore, more and more people in the Dongfang family were seriously injured. However, after these people were injured, they quietly retreated and, naturally, others took their place. Under the stimulation of this life and death crisis, the people of the Dongfang family were united like never before. There were no more scheming and scheming from before. There was only one common goal: to protect the family together. Chapter 1993. The level. 7 elders were pleased to see the unprecedented unity of the Dongfang family. However, the entire Dongfang family was trapped in the Flying Wolf Star. The extinction of the Dongfang family was only a matter of time. Elder, we can't hold on any longer. We've used up all our crystals. With our strength, we can only hold on for 2 hours at most. After 2 hours, the Astral Guardian Array will collapse and the Dongfang family will be exterminated. A level 6 elder hurriedly walked over and said, "Gather all the core disciples of the younger generation. We can't let the family be exterminated. We have to send them out." A level 7 elders said in a deep voice. Every force had a secret teleportation formation that led to the outside world. The Dongfang family naturally didn't lack such teleportation formations. However, only a small number of people knew about this teleportation formation. Only level 7 elders had the right to know about it. Therefore, these level 7 elders still kept some of their crystals to activate the formation. Soon, all the core disciples of the younger generation were gathered. These people knew what was going on, so no one said anything. The others didn't say anything either. Instead, they poured all their energy into the Astral Guardian Array. They all knew that these core disciples were the last hope of the Dongfang family. As long as they survived, they would avenge them and exterminate the 9 forces one day. If they joined in, no one in the Dongfang family would be able to escape. At this moment, it was less than an hour before the Astral Guardian Array collapsed. At this moment, many of the Dongfang family's disciples were severely injured. Some of them had even started to die. Hurry up and leave. A level 7 elder of the Dongfang family shouted angrily. One of the level 7 elders led the group towards the teleportation formation. It would be too late if they didn't leave now. Boom! However, before they could get close to the teleportation formation, a terrifying force suddenly bombarded the Astral Guardian Array. Boom! 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 The Astral Guardian Array shook violently and emitted a blinding light. Then, the sound of cloth being torn was heard. Then, with a boom, the entire Astral Guardian Array shattered. Boom! 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 With the sudden collapse of the Astral Guardian Array, countless disciples of the Dongfang family were directly shattered. In just an instant, 1,000th of the Dongfang family's disciples were shattered. Among them, there were even some who were elders. None of you can leave. AI Feiqi appeared out of thin air in front of the core disciples of the Dongfang family and said coldly. At the same time, Tyrant Shock Hall's Hall Master and the others also appeared. It was obvious that these 9 ninth level creation realm experts had attacked together and destroyed the Astral Protection Array that could last for an hour. It's over. Seeing them enter, everyone from the Dongfang family could not help but feel despair in their hearts. Facing these powerful existences, how could they resist? Immediately, those rank 7 elders could not help but feel regret. They regretted not sending the core disciples of the younger generation away earlier. Now, none of them could leave. You guys really deserve to die. Have you used up all of your crystals? The Yu-Clan's clan master said with a gloomy face. His eyes flashed with terrifying killing intent as he looked at the Dongfang family disciple. Ha! It's not just the crystals. Don't even think about getting any of the elixirs, weapons, and treasures. As long as our clan master returns, all of you will die. One of the rank 7 elders laughed out loud. However, his laughter stopped abruptly. Because AI Feiqi was choking him by the neck, he couldn't even laugh. Put him down. Otherwise, you will definitely die. At this moment, a bone-chilling voice suddenly rang in AI Feiqi and the rest's ears, causing them to shiver. At the same time, 20 figures appeared in the crowd out of thin air. Hearing the bone-chilling voice, AI Feiqi's heart skipped a beat, and he almost let go of the Dongfang family disciple in his hand. However, he was a ninth-level creation realm expert after all. How could he let go just because of a voice? Therefore, he did not let go. Instead, he followed the voice and looked at the familiar voice. Dongfang Lang, you're not dead? When he saw the person who had spoken, AI Feiqi's hand trembled, and he almost crushed the rank 7 elder of the Dongfang family. Dongfang Lang took a step forward with an indifferent expression. His eyes were filled with murderous intent as he stared at AI Feiqi. AI Feiqi, you didn't expect this, did you? Back then, your palm had sent me into the turbulent space, but I didn't die. I'm back now, and my power has greatly increased. Are all of you disappointed? AI Feiqi, the Hall Master of Bajing Hall, and the rest narrowed their eyes. If Dongfang Lang had not mentioned it, they would not have noticed it. Now that they took a look at Dongfang Lang, they realized that they could no longer see through his power. At the same time, even though Dongfang Lang did not release his aura, a strong and faintly discernible aura of danger was constantly emitted from Dongfang Lang's body. It suppressed their souls and caused them to tremble. Dongfang Lang had broken through, and he was at least at the half-step insight realm. Everyone was greatly shocked. Then, they all looked at AI Feiqi with displeased gazes. If it was not for this fellow's palm, Dongfang Lang would not have broken through like them. Now that the other party was a small realm higher than them, he could easily defeat them. AI Feiqi was extremely depressed. He originally wanted to kill Dongfang Lang, but he did not expect that it would be him instead. This made him want to slap Dongfang Lang to death. Back in the Liguang's secret realm, he had encountered a half-step insight realm existence. Therefore, he was more aware of the terror of a half-step insight realm expert than the Hall Master of Bajing Hall and the rest. Boom! Dongfang Lang suddenly moved. Everyone only saw a black shadow flash in front of them. Before they could react, a loud, dull sound was heard. Then, a huge black shadow flew out into the sky. It was not until this moment that everyone reacted. At this moment, Dongfang Lang was standing where AI Feiqi was originally standing. In front of Dongfang Lang was the 7th level elder of the Dongfang family with a dull expression. As for AI Feiqi, he was the one who had just flown out. No one present could clearly see how Dongfang Lang attacked. Only AI Feiqi knew very well. Dongfang Lang had actually punched him in the head. The most abominable thing was that he did not explode his head with a punch. Instead, he only sent him flying, and at the same time, his facial features were smashed. Dongfang Lang, you're courting death. AI Feiqi roared and rushed forward. During this process, he had already taken out his origin tool and unleashed his strongest attack towards Dongfang Lang. Dongfang Lang smiled disdainfully and punched out again. With a bang, AI Feiqi was once again sent flying like a sandbag. In front of Dongfang Lang, he was simply unable to withstand a single blow. Impossible. How can you be so powerful? You're so much stronger than that person? AI Feiqi was about to collapse. Logically speaking, even if Dongfang Lang had broken through to the insight realm, it was impossible for him to be so powerful. Dongfang Lang's current strength had definitely surpassed Lin Zhe's. Although AI Feiqi did not know Lin Zhe's identity, he could guess that Lin Zhe must be an outstanding disciple of super force. An outstanding disciple of such a force must have far more resources than Dongfang Lang. Logically speaking, it was impossible for Dongfang Lang, who had just broken through to the half-step insight realm, to be stronger than Lin Zhe. Dongfang Lang grinned and said, "Speaking of which, it's all thanks to you. I have to thank you for my current achievements. If it wasn't for your palm, I would still be just like you, a clown." Dongfang Lang laughed out loud. Indeed, he had to thank AI Feiqi for everything he had. If it wasn't for AI Feiqi, how could they appear in the Rising Sundown Mansion? During this period of time in the Rising Sundown Mansion, Dongfang Yuan and the other strength had increased to the peak of the 9th level of the creation realm. They were only one step away from breaking through to the half-step insight realm. On the other hand, Dongfang Lang naturally broke through to the half-step insight realm. Originally, even if Dongfang Lang had broken through, he would not have such powerful combat strength. However, who was the rising sundial mansion? In the following time, Dongfang Lang and the others cultivated some cultivation methods and combat skills that were suitable for them. The cultivation methods and combat skills of the rising sundial mansion were the best. Even a colossus like the Sun Sect could not compare to them. Moreover, because of Hichu Luoshu's time acceleration, they had already consolidated their realms and cultivated their cultivation methods. Their strength had skyrocketed. Even if Lin Zhe was an outstanding disciple who was specially nurtured by a colossus. However, could the Lin family be compared to the rising Sun Dao Mansion? Therefore, after Dongfang Lang had succeeded in his cultivation, his strength had already surpassed Lin Zhe. Although Lin Zhe was powerful, he did not manage to kill AI Feiqi and let him escape. However, with Dongfang Yuan's strength, which far surpassed Lin Zhe's, AI Feiqi was simply a punching bag who could not withstand a single blow. I've said that if you don't let go, you will definitely die. Therefore, you can die now. Dongfang Lang said indifferently and took a step forward. Boom! Without any hesitation, AI Feiqi was sent flying with a punch. This time, Dongfang Lang increased his strength and directly shattered AI Feiqi's flesh, blood, bones, and meridians. Dongfang Lang, that's enough. Just as Dongfang Lang was about to attack, the Hall Master of Bajing Hall suddenly shouted and took a step forward, looking at Dongfang Lang coldly. At the same time, the Hall Masters of the other 7 forces also took a step forward with murderous intent and looked at Dongfang Lang with murderous intent. Now, they were in cahoots with AI Feiqi and were unwilling to see Dongfang Lang's strength. Therefore, they had to advance and retreat together. Boom! Dongfang Lang's punch landed on AI Feiqi's body without any hesitation, beating him half to death. He then looked at the Hall Master of Bajing Hall and the others with a disdainful smile. Who do you think you are? Do you have the right to talk to me? Are you worthy? Seeing the strong disdain on Dongfang Lang's face, the Hall Master of Bajing Hall and the others were furious. However, Dongfang Lang was now stronger than them and indeed had the right to despise them. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.